Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plymouth Select Board, Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. If you'd all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda will be the public hearing for Pillory Pub LLC, doing business as Pillory Pub, extension of hours to 1 a.m., comprehensive entertainment, Group 1, radio, TV, and common victulars. Mr. Quintal.
Thank you. In accordance with Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws as amended, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at the Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street on Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at 6 p.m. to consider the application for a transfer of a seasonal all-alcohol restaurant license from Pillory Pub LLC, doing business as Pillory Pub, 72 Water Street, Benjamin J. Parsons, manager, to Pillory Plymouth LLC, DBA, Pillory Pub, 72 Water Street, John Sheehan, manager. Description of the premises is as follows: approximately 864 square feet, which includes a dining area, bar, kitchen, utility room, and restrooms.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Ian Hedges here on behalf of the applicant. With me here tonight is Frederick Casanelli and Daniel Casanelli, as well as John Sheehan.
Please make sure your microphone is turned on.
Is that better?
This room is 9 minutes faster than Brook Road, Milton. State route breaks south.
So we can start again. My name is Attorney Ian Hedges here on behalf of the applicant. With me here tonight is Frederick and Daniel Casanelli in the back, as well as John Sheehan. All three are the partners on this particular location. Mr. Sheehan's the proposed license manager. As was stated, this is a transfer of a Section 12 all alcoholic beverages restaurant license for the bar and restaurant known as Pillory Pub here on Water Street in Plymouth. All three of the partners have significant experience owning and operating restaurants, particularly in the town of Plymouth. They've owned Lena's Kitchen for about the past 6 years and Salt for about the past 4. In terms of the restaurant itself, there won't be too many changes. There is an extension of hours until 1 a.m., but no physical or structural changes to the restaurant itself. And other than that, I am happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Any board members have any questions?
I just have a comment in support. I know the Casanellis, they're great operators. Their 2 restaurants, Salt and Lena's, are very successful, very well run. So I'm in full support of this transfer to these guys. So thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in opposition of this article? Or anyone in favor that would like to speak? Okay, now we'll bring it back to the board.
Make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Blitzer, seconded by Mr. Mahoney. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Plymouth County Cranberry Quilters. And just so folks know, after that agenda item, we will be taking the Three Hearts Farm agenda item.
Hello, I'm with the Plymouth County Cranberry Quilters, and we have a presentation to a new young lady who's come here, and let's see how I do with this. Private mein Zivat Hail, Uno Seo Podaruna Zivas, Shatap Pre Vati Vatse, Washel Edano Plamogi. This is a quilt for you. and to welcome you here to Plymouth. Thank you. What I said, in case you didn't understand, was, hello, my name is Gail. We have a gift for you to welcome you and your family to Plymouth.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Golub family that have come over from Ukraine during this time of war, we'd like to thank you for the quilt and the gift that was offered to them. I'd also like to thank the town of Plymouth and the selectmen who have also helped us out. Dickie Quintal, he opened up his local business for us and raised $1,600 for the family, which got both Kate and Andrew into camp this summer, and also chess class for Kate, where she came in third for the summer, and her brother Andrew's now in soccer classes. And so we appreciate, not only as a selectman, but as a local business operator, for his generosity and help. And Betty Cavaco reached out to me personally as well, offering transportation, possibly a car if we needed it. I did have one that we fixed up, so we appreciated everything. So thank you to the town, and thank you to the selectmen for everything. We appreciate your help.
Thank you for this beautiful present, and my family will be always remember about Plymouth citizen kindness.
Wonderful. And the town is very glad that they are safe. The next item on the agenda will be Mr. Hart from Three Hearts Farm. I know we have some exciting new news from our Veterans Organization here.
Hello, I'm Christopher Hart, President and founder of the Nathan Hale Veterans Foundation, Executive Director of Three Hearts Veterans Farm in Plymouth, 232 Beaver Dam Road. And thank you for having me. I haven't been here prior to COVID and all that stuff, and I have never been in this office hall. It's beautiful. So I'm going to take you through a little slideshow. That'll probably get me to not talk as much as I usually do, so that'd be good for you. So that's my wife and I on the far left. We actually got married on the property. Diane started volunteering with us at the Veterans Outreach Center 15 years ago. She was a school teacher here in Plymouth for 35 years. And on the right is our team, is myself on the right. My wife, Diane. Barry, he's a retired Plymouth firefighter, and his wife, Nicole, and that's our team inside that machine we have. On the top is our logo, and it's my grandfather and his two brothers that were World War II heroes, and it's a pretty cool logo. Long story behind it, but so I'll try, like I said, I know you have a busy night. On the bottom is some baby radishes that we grow. They're called French breakfast radishes. And you can see on the far right-hand side what the walls look like inside our parade farm. And what I did was I put one of the walls laying down flat so you could see what a whole wall looks like when it's full. And there's actually 4 walls like that. So we can grow 3.5 acres of lettuce in one container and only use 5 gallons of water a week. And it's probably the most high-tech hydroponic equipment that we have in Plymouth right now. It's never been around this area, and we're the first people to have it. So we've invested about a little over $250,000 this year into the equipment, the setup, new fence going around, and done a lot of new stuff. It's coming out pretty cool. It's really exciting when you go by and see it in person. I'm not doing it much justice. I don't want to show you too much. I want you to be surprised when you go visit it. That's how back we're starting to do some of our wellness programs at the farm. So on the left-hand side is a jacuzzi, and there's a pergola above it that was one of the 6 Eagle Scout projects that were done at the farm, and it's on top of a beautiful deck and nice privacy. And then on the right-hand side is a new raised garden. It's another Eagle Scout project, and that's 32 feet long by 4 feet wide, and we've built 18 of these so far at the farm. They're some of the most well-built raised gardens in the town. They're absolutely beautiful. This is our outdoor dining area for our veterans. That's what the farm looked like when we got it. We probably, altogether, probably close to $500,000 we put into the property as far as ripping up all the old junk that was there, putting in 2 parking lots. We've done a lot of work, but I'd really like the selectmen to come by. I know Harry's come by once and checked it out, but love for you people to come by. And we've done all this without any state or federal funding. All the money that we put into the farm, including buying the property, restoring everything, all came from basically within the community. Glen Electric, Eagan Landscape, and the list goes on. West End Drilling, everyone's helped us. It's an unbelievable thing. So, anyone have any questions?
John?
Chris, good to see you.
You too.
What do you do with the produce that you create or you grow? Where does that end up?
A lot of it we've been using at our Veterans Outreach Center, at our food pantry, and then a lot of it we're now selling to the consumer. In order to be self-sufficient at the farm, we needed a way to bring in some revenue, and the grants are getting harder to get. Nonprofit, every other block, I'd started this. It'll be 19 years, November 23rd. And there's so many new nonprofits, and it's really hard to kind of compete with that. So we wanted to teach veterans farming. We started a farmers market so we can teach them how to market it. And we're having a lot of success. We're growing, I think, the best lettuce in the whole town. Everyone's saying it's the best they've ever eaten. So if anyone here has tried it.
Do you
Thanks, Chris. You do a phenomenal job down there.
Thank you.
I've been there, but it's been a couple of years.
I've been talking all day, so my voice is
Yeah.
almost gone. So
And Diane
you caught me at
trusted
a
you to-
good time.
Diane trusted you to come here alone tonight?
Yeah, no one else wants to speak anymore. I mean, I hate doing it, but no one else really wants to do it, so here I am, you know. But it isn't just vegetables we grow there. We grow love at that place. It's a beautiful place, and there's water features and big water wheel and beautiful sound system, beautiful barn, pool table, pinball machine.
So one more question. You've done all that on a footprint that is how big? How many, what is it? Is it a quarter, half an acre? How big is it?
It's a little under 3/4 of an acre. Yeah.
So the point being that you've really maximized out your space, what you have there.
We'll be the largest mini leaf grower in Plymouth by far. We probably already are. We're only going to sell to a few restaurants. We really want to reach the consumer, and because I think the consumer deserves a great product, and I don't really want to sell it all to the restaurant. It could be selling it to Yankee fans for all I know. You know what I mean? I want my neighbors to eat it. Everyone that comes by says this is incredible, and so that's kind of what we're doing now. And a lot of our veterans, they really enjoy it, and you know, people from especially the Pine Hills, are very supportive, and they come in and they mingle with the veterans, and especially the young veterans. It's a great way for them to kind of reintegrate back into the system. And there's a lot more to it. I just don't want to say too much. And you know, I'm one of those guys that talks a lot, and I didn't say anything. So, you know, I mean, we fundraised for this for 3 years without telling anybody. And that's pretty hard to do. But, I mean, for some strange reason, a lot of doctors help us. There's a lot of generous people, you know, in Plymouth, and we've had help, you know, from Pennsylvania, Florida, California, all kinds of people from everywhere have sent us donations, and it's wonderful.
That's wonderful. I mean, you guys have done a phenomenal job. I remember, you know, growing up down there, it was nothing really to look at, but you can tell that there's a certain serene about it now. So congratulations. I think you guys have done a great job. I know Mr. Helm has something to say.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to stop by the other day. and kind of tour the nearly 3/4 of an acre. And I encourage everybody when they're open, you'll see the sign, and maybe Christopher can tell us when they're open to, for lettuce and all that stuff. Stop in, take a tour. Have Diane give you the tour of the hydroponics, because she knows all about it, and I don't think Christopher does.
I
But-
do.
But it is an incredible facility. The hydroponics it was an amazing education. I had no idea how hydroponics worked, and it's pretty incredible what they're doing down there. And to see everything that they've managed to fit in on that land. You know, we drive by it on Beaver Dam Road, and we see the big fences, and we know stuff is going on. It's incredible what they've done in a short period of time there, and I really recommend that everybody stop in. They'll treat you like family, and they'll give you the tour. It's well worth it to see not only the hydroponics and what creative thinking can do within the town of Plymouth, but also what the motivations of the heart, pardon the pun, can do in creating a wonderful organization for our veterans. So thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to come and take a visit.
Have a wonderful night. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Nice to see you. Yes, sir.
Okay, now we have administrative notes, just to let the board know. Number 4 of the admin note is being stricken because it's actually captured under our fall town meeting articles. So if anyone has an issue, or how would we like to move the admin notes?
I'll move approval on 1 and 2.
Okay.
I'll second.
Anyone want to move on 3? Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Unanimous. Admin note 3.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor? 4 to 1. Okay. I would take public comment ahead of Mr. Trifletti if it has something to do with other than town meeting. So if there's anyone in the audience that wants to discuss anything other than town meeting, we'll take comments during that discussion. So, just in case. Anybody? Anyone online? Nope. Okay. Now we have Mr. Trifletti, town meeting location discussion.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair of the Select Board, members of the Select Board, and those in attendance. I'm delighted to be here again to provide you with an update, and I appreciate that I'm able to participate remotely at your meeting. Once again, a little history. As you know, I requested that town meeting be granted the opportunity to have remote participation, and tonight I renew that request to the board after further reviewing the in-person town meeting. It's clear that with remote participation, we can eliminate risk, and with the in-person town meeting, I would strive to reduce the risk. And I have had direct contact. I'm not relying on any surveys. I'm having direct contact now with town meeting members, and I in particular have contacted all those who previously responded to a survey requesting that we continue with a virtual town meeting. I did have an opportunity after last meeting to read the opinion letters from special town council. I agree with those opinions. They're consistent with my opinion, and they're consistent with the further opinion I received from town council. And just to address that, once again, I refer you to General Laws Chapter 39, Section 10, which states in pertinent part that whenever the moderator determines that voters in attendance are being deprived of the opportunity to participate therein for any reason whatsoever, he shall recess. And it goes on this language, but Essentially, I want to comment that I agree that it would matter that one or more town meeting members sign in and then indicate that they're unable to participate. I'm aware of at least 6 or 7 town meeting members who have said to me that they're unable to participate, and further, someone will be signing in, and we would make arrangements for the sign-in to be outdoors in front of Plymouth North High School. And in view of the statute, which indicates that the moderator will consult with the Board of Selectmen, I'm requesting that I have the opportunity to consult with you. I know that normally you set a meeting at 7:30 a.m. Usually I am at the podium being available to town meeting members to answer questions at that time. And if possible, I'd request that you notice your meeting perhaps at 7:15 to give us a chance to have that conversation. I would note that the statute says consult, it does not say agree. And so I will certainly consult with the board. And finally, at the last meeting, the chair cited the charter, which refers to points of order, and town meeting having the opportunity to vote 2/3 to overturn a point of order, overturn the moderator. That is for procedural matters. This is statutory. It is not a procedural matter, and the statute is mandatory. It's not directory. It talks about the moderator shall act, and so that is how I will proceed at town meeting. If I determine that people are being deprived of the opportunity, I'll certainly consult with the board and then make a determination as to how to move forward. Meanwhile, I have met multiple times with a group of people who are working with me to plan. We've met remotely by Zoom, and we also took a tour of Plymouth North High School last week. And I will report to the select board that certainly after talking with many town meeting members, there are many who do not want to come in person, others who will begrudgingly come in person, but certainly want as many safety precautions taken. Therefore, we'll have the sign-in outdoors. The board, the health department will be providing masks to those people that might want it. They'll be providing sanitizers. And then in order to reduce the risk, I'm scheduling town meeting members in the Center for Performing Arts, and that will be limited to town meeting members, town clerk, town council, the assistant moderator. And the reason for that is that when I talk certainly to medical people, the obvious common sense situation is that as you increase the number of people, you increase the risk. So in order to reduce the risk, we're going to limit the number of people. Town meeting is first for the town meeting members who are voters in attendance as defined in the statute. And in addition to the Center for Performing Arts, we'll have a separate classroom for those town meeting members who wish to be in a room where everyone is masked. It'll be voluntary, it'll be a mask-only room. That certainly does not prevent other town meeting members in the Center for Performing Arts to also wear masks. And as we move forward towards town meeting, I'll be instructing town meeting members as to how I'll be handling things such as recognizing speakers. Initially, I had hoped to continue with V-Voter, but after receiving a number of recommendations from those with better technology expertise than I have, I've determined that for this town meeting, it would be best to go back to the clickers. And so we'll be going back to the remote clickers for the voting. I'll be asking town meeting members to notify me in advance if they want to speak. And if they don't notify me in advance and they do want to speak, then we're going to try to limit the number of people that get up at one time. I've also appointed past member of the select board and past assistant town moderator, Brian Alosi, to be the second assistant town moderator to be in the second room with town meeting members in order that we'll have the opportunity to have communication to me as to people in that room who may wish to speak on a motion, make a point of order. The school department can make lunch available in the cafeteria, but also they will make it available outdoors. There'll be outside ability for people to be eating outdoors or in their cars if they don't want to be in a room with many people. The select board staff, finance committee, and the public are invited to join us at Plymouth North High School in the library, which is a fairly large room. Initially, that was going to be designated for town meeting members when we were considering the use of the V-voter. But following this morning's planning meeting, when it became clear that the need to balance the technology with the multiple rooms combined with possibly giving Chromebooks to everybody to use the V-voter, I determined that for this town meeting, we'll use the clickers. That freed up the library, which is a large space that would be available for other people who wish to participate at the town meeting. And I think that is an overview of the planning. There are other parts of the planning. I won't go into all the details, as well as I won't go into all of the feedback that I'm getting from the town meeting members with whom I've spoke, other than to say to the board that I'm working very hard to try to balance the needs of all town meeting members, which are those who want to be in person, combined with those that want to be remote, and those who feel that under any circumstances they cannot appear. There was one town meeting member who said to me, and I'll just quote what he said. He said, if I get COVID, I'll die. And therefore, under no circumstances will he or his daughter, who's a town meeting member, participate in person. One of the other interesting notes that hadn't thought about in the past is that in addition to people who are currently indicating they do not want to participate, there are going to be others potentially who have COVID, who certainly should then not be in person according to CDC guidelines. And in fact, yesterday, when I spoke to one town meeting member, she indicated to me that she had been fairly neutral, supported remote, supported in person, but she now has COVID. And so now, because she has COVID, she supports the virtual remote, because she appreciates what's involved when you have COVID. So that's my initial presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We're going to just bring it to the board, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Stephen, you had mentioned that initially there was approximately 6, maybe a little bit more, individuals who said that they couldn't participate. So when you use that term that they said they couldn't participate in the auditorium, in the, the Performing Arts Center. But they're willing to participate if you set them up in a separate room and they're comfortable in that at the high school, correct?
No, that's not correct. Those 6 or 7 people are the ones that I've identified who are not comfortable coming into the building and being around a large gathering. And their reasons vary. Some of them are immune compromised or immune suppressed. Others have family members who live in their household who are immune compromised or immune suppressed. So, I'm happy to provide you with the names of those people, but I don't think it's necessary for purposes of hearing. But suffice to say that these people are not comfortable with that. There are other people that are only comfortable if there's a mask-only room. And beyond that, there are other people who don't want to be in person, but as they said, they will attend, but they have asked me to do whatever is possible to reduce the risk for them.
Okay, and currently you're continuing to move forward with planning for approximately, reducing the risk for them using, what, 3 to 6 rooms here? You said the library, the Performing Arts Center, 3?
So,
In a classroom?
if I might respond, the plans have evolved. There have been a lot of recommendations that I've received and I've accepted. So certainly, the V voter was one recommendation to go to the clickers. Another was that initially we were looking at many more rooms, a separate room for FinCom, a separate room for the public. But as we've continued to discuss the planning, and once we eliminated V voter, which eliminated tech buddies, I was able to then further reduce the number of rooms from 5 or 6 down to 3. So the 2 rooms for the town meeting members and the library for everyone else.
All right, Stephen, thank you.
Charlie?
So Stephen, 3 rooms you're talking about? We couldn't do it, in 2 rooms? You couldn't social distance? Yeah, I don't understand. Yep, good.
Okay, so Charlie, I don't want to repeat myself, but again, I disagree with your vote. I think that the only way to eliminate risk for the many people that are concerned about risk is to have remote participation. Now, one of the proposals last week at the tour was that the board consider remote this fall with a promise, if you will, from me, that in the spring we would do in-person with just the 2 rooms for town meeting members and everybody else in the Center for Performing Arts. And I indicated that I would accept that compromise proposal insofar as I would then have an opportunity to give notice to town meeting members that that's going to be the plan for the spring, absent a state emergency. And then town meeting members would have the opportunity to resign if they felt that they couldn't continue as in-person town meeting members, and give the precincts a chance to select replacements for them. But at this point, with a month out, there's not really time to do that. And so for this fall, I'm requesting that we be remote with that compromise proposal in the spring. But if that's not something that the board is willing to do, then we're going to continue with this plan, and I'll have to reevaluate in the spring to see where we are in terms of both COVID and town meeting members and the hybrid legislation. I mean, clearly, everybody agrees that the hybrid model is something that we all embrace because it gives town meeting members the same opportunity that you provide tonight at your board meeting. You have a hybrid and I'm remote and you're all there in person. And certainly that's a goal to which we're striving. But in the meantime, I'm trying to do whatever I can to reduce the risk. And one way to do it is to reduce the number of people that are together in one room. And I'm certainly focusing on the town meeting members to provide them with the least risk as possible, given that you voted to have the town meeting members meet in person.
Stephen, last town meeting, the same thing, the same issue came up, and it was going to be the last virtual town meeting. And when we voted, I said, I'll vote, but this is it for me. I said, it's got to be in person. It's much more effective in person. So I just, Derek, if we got heard from our council on the charter, on what rights?
Yeah, so
I think it's time that we test this, okay? Because it's going to happen again in the spring, so if we don't force this issue, it's going to happen again. So do we know, under the charter, is it a 2/3 vote to overrule the moderator?
So as the moderator pointed out, there's a section that he referenced, a point of order that allows town meeting members to overrule a moderator's decision that he would say is procedural. Town council agrees with the moderator's opinion on that that's a procedural process, and under the statute, under section 10 of, again, what the moderator just pointed out, that section in the charter would not apply. I can say, though, there is a section in the charter 2-4-5, which states that the representative town meeting may adopt rules and regulations relating to its procedures and its methods of operation. Certainly, it's of the opinion of town council that that could be applied here. But at the end of the day, I think if the town meeting were to overrule, say, the methods of operation of town meeting, the moderator has been very clear on his intention to invoke chapter section of the general laws, chapter 10 of the general laws, that allow him to delay town meeting by 14 days.
May I just speak to that very quickly, just for clarification? The statute is the moderator may, in certain circumstances and in consultation with local public health officials and in coordination with the select board, recess and continue. It is not with consultation of the select board, it's in coordination. Two very different concepts. Just a point of clarification.
Could I speak to that?
Sure.
First of all, the language in the third line is shall, for the moderator, it's not may, it's shall. And again, I'm seeing language in the fourth line that refers to consultation. I'm not seeing the word coordination, but I can tell you that it's my opinion and the opinion of town council that consultation does not mean agreement. It means that I will consult and then I'll make my decision. Because under this statute, as well as under other statutory authority, the moderator has responsibility for the location and the operation of town meetings. So while certainly the select board can determine the date and the place and whether it's going to be in person or remote, once you've made that decision, the responsibility then shifts from your board to the moderator. And that's what I intend to do, is exercise my responsibility under the statutory authority.
Stephen, I understand that you want to have the town meeting in one room. Why isn't the select board and FinCom, why aren't we all in the same room? We're all choosing to be here in person. I don't, I'm not afraid of COVID at this point. I don't want to wear a mask. I want to be in person, but I want to be with all the town meeting members. It's much more effective. So why are you telling us and these other boards that we can't be in the same room? I mean, Kevin Canty with FinCom presents all the articles. He should be in the same room with the town meeting members, looking at them as he's presenting these articles. I understand you might want a separate room for the folks that are afraid of the COVID. I get that. I understand that. But we can take a room for the maybe the 10% of town meeting. And I guarantee it's not more than 10% of town meeting that's afraid to come in person. And we can put them separated in a room. So I don't understand why you all these multiple rooms.
So I'll respond and say,
please, thank
I
you.
appreciate that you're not afraid and you don't want to wear a mask, but there are town meeting members that are afraid. There are town meeting members that want to wear a mask. And finally, and I'm just repeating myself, but there is risk involved in public gatherings indoors, and the risk increases when you increase the number of people. And unlike any other board or committee meeting in the town of Plymouth, the town meeting is the largest governmental gathering of a group that's going to be voting. We have 163 voters if you include all town meeting members plus the moderator who breaks a tie. And therefore, I'm not willing, after consulting with many town meeting members who have asked me to represent their concerns and voice their concerns, I'm not willing to increase the risk any more than your board has already determined, which is the risk inherent in an in-person gathering, and I'm not going to increase it beyond what's absolutely required, which is the town meeting members, a clerk, town council, and assistant town moderator. But you'll be in the building, and you'll have a video feed, and you'll have audio feed. And if you want to proceed with the in-person town meeting, that's the manner in which we'll go forward.
Again, I think all the boards should be in the room with the town meeting members, and if people, if they're threatened by that, they can go to the other room and be social distance with masks on. That's the CDC guidelines, the 6 feet and with the mask on. They can volunteer to go to that room. But I think we should have everybody in the same room, except for the folks that choose to be social distance and wearing masks. And anybody, like in this room, we have 40 people, there 2 people have masks in this room out of 40. So, and in the auditorium, if somebody's uncomfortable, they can put a mask on there too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just think that to have these multiple rooms, having the boards separate, makes it complicated. The last town meeting, there was a lot of confusion. It wasn't a smooth town meeting, and everybody can attest to that. So let's not make this too complicated.
I'm just going to, if the board has nothing else to say, I have a couple comments. First of all, this is like watching a bad episode of Game of Thrones. It really is. It saddens me that we're going toe-to-toe over trying to do what's best for our community. First of all, there is no public health crisis. COVID is here. I mean, we have 8,000 kids in school. That library at Plymouth North will hold 130 people. So to have more than one room, now let's not forget that it's going to cost us. These rooms are going to be extra money. Originally, it was going to be an extra $10,000. But I'll apologize now, Mr. Trifletti. You're not going to tell me where I'm going to sit. I want to sit with the people that elected me. That is the most important thing for this board. I want to sit in town meeting with the people that elected this board to represent them. And I think it is fundamentally unfair that you try to restrict access to the people that we have that support our town meeting and our residents. I don't want to sit in a room, not that I don't mind sitting with my colleagues here. I want to be with the town meeting members. I want to be with the Advisory and Finance Committee, and I want to be engaged because that's our job, to be engaged. Now, I appreciate that you're trying to, not have the risk, but as far as the CDC is concerned, there is no risk. So I don't understand why we can't have the auditorium and then have the library that'll fit 130 people, and have FinCom, the selectmen, in with the town meeting members where they belong, and have everybody else that doesn't feel comfortable. And I'm willing to make a bet that you're not going to have that many people in that room that don't feel comfortable. We've all started to live our lives. And although I appreciate your concern for everyone, I just don't think you have the authority to tell people where they can sit and where they can't sit. And if I'm wrong, then let legal counsel tell me that. But I'll tell you right now, I am not sitting sequestered in a room away from town meeting. Just my opinion. Now we'll take public comment. Oh, John, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I'm waiting after the public. Okay. I'll just take them one at a time. Steve, Mr. Brewster, Pat McCarthy.
Steve Lyden. I'm not a town meeting member. Was, but not now. The question I have is, when the moderator puts in his 14 days, what happens to the end of 14 days? Does town meeting show up again, and can he say he needs, he can cancel it for another 14 days? Are we going to go on so long that we're not going to have a fall town meeting? It will go into spring town meeting?
It's the
I don't know.
possibility that that can happen, and each time that happens, it's another $20,000.
No, I just don't understand how this can go on forever.
Thank you. Mr. Brewster.
Thank you to the Select Board. Wrestling Brewster, Chair, Precinct 15. First, I'd like to mention that how encouraged I am by the public being engaged in our form of government. From the Bump Rock Road debacle on, there's been people paying attention and standing up and taking our elected officials to a higher level. I don't think a week's gone by where I haven't heard Mr. Cirque and Mr. Bolton standing up and saying, you're spending how much for what? So I just want to say that how encouraged I am with that. And with that, as elected officials, we're not getting away with anything anymore. There's people, the public is holding us to our oath of office. And as elected officials, our personal beliefs and bias have to take a back seat to the public. For democracy to survive, that needs to be paramount. Unless we're a dictator, we are tasked with representing the public. With all due respect to the moderator, I feel he's overstepping. I continually hear how, by statute, Mr. Fletty has the power. Mr. Fletty, the people of Plymouth have the power. They have representatives duly elected to act on their behalf. And I think it's time that, as some of the representatives said, it's time that the public is heard. I continually hear, that the public isn't being heard and that they're not being listened to. First I heard that we're going to have, Mr. Fletty said that he was going to delay 14 days until he gets what he wants. Now it seems that Mr. Fletty is trying to make the town meeting so convoluted and impossible that no one will ever want to be in person ever again. And I get that people feel compromised. People feel that they're at risk. But we can do this. We don't need 5 rooms. We don't need 3 rooms. We need 2 rooms. The whole point of having an in-person town meeting is so I can look at my public officials and I can say, how much is it going to cost for that new fire building? And he has to get up and he has to answer me. That's what's been lost in our virtual town meetings. And every time we get up and we want to say something, we're looking at the queue. We can see that Mr. Cirque's 5th in line and he wants to say something. That's lost when we're in virtual town meeting. We can do this. We just need to make it happen. We can do it in the auditorium and one other room. I have seen multiple town meeting members and the moderator at events with large numbers of people. We had 800 people at the opening ceremonies of school. It can be done. We can make it happen. Mr. Moderator, I'm pleading with you to tear those walls down. It can be done. I say, Mr. Fletty, tear down the walls. If Mr. Fletty persists in creating this chaos with multiple rooms, I implore the Select Board, FinCom, and the department heads to join town meeting in the auditorium. We need to take our town meeting back. I have 3 questions. Where will Mr. Fletty be on town meeting day? Why do we have more than 2 rooms? And the other one was the Chromebooks, but I'm happy to see that that's been taken out. It's time, that we the people get back to our work of the government. It's time that I don't hear from my constituents, why aren't our officials listening to the town? The town is speaking up, they're paying attention. We can do this if we make it happen. We can do it with 2 rooms, and we can create an atmosphere that's safe for those people who feel compromised. I plead with our town to make this happen. Thank you.
I want to give a heartfelt thanks to wrestling. He stole certainly a lot of my thunder, and we certainly got rid of the Chromebook situation, thank God. And wrestling, Brewster and I were back-to-back chairman of my former Precinct 5. Current, I'm vice chair of Precinct 18, and wrestling's chair of Precinct 15. So I think we together have some experience in town meeting. And I do want to say one thing, though, before I get into some of these other issues. I just do want to appreciate all the work that Steve has done over the years as town moderator. And overall, over the years, he's run a good town meeting. But I am so disturbed, saddened, and concerned for him and for what is going on now. And with all the events in this town that have been going on, okay, they're public events, but people have been going to them. And I said this 2 weeks ago when I spoke. They're taking the risk. There's no state of emergency, and we have to live with COVID. I do want to go back to the history, a little bit of our current town meeting makeup. We all were elected in 2022 to serve as town meeting members. We have about 50 brand new town meeting members. We all took on the obligation to represent our citizens, our constituents, and to work for the good of the town. We all knew and still know that COVID is here to stay. When we chose in May to get elected, we chose to serve the people of the town of Plymouth in person, at in-person town meeting, and to do the best job we could for the town of Plymouth, for all of Plymouth. I represent all of Plymouth, just not my precinct. And we knew we had to take precautions if we want to stay healthy. We certainly knew that from guidelines from all over the country, et cetera. It's our choice to whether or not we take that responsibility seriously and do the best we can to stay safe, to stay healthy, and to protect others. That's our job and our duty. Nobody can tell us in the town that we must. But other events that have occurred in this town could, and I know people have gone to weddings, could stipulate, if they so chose, that people wear masks, that they get vaccinated, that they do a test that day, that they make sure that they're feeling healthy and social distance. I'm on the board of the League of Women Voters. At our annual meeting, to go to annual meeting, to be elected to the board, we were asked to test that day, to bring a mask and wear a mask and to be fully vaccinated. Nobody asked for our cards, but I can tell you all of us that went to the meeting, and there were probably about 30 of us, we were inside and outside at a private home, and we chose to spread apart. We chose to be safe, but we did the duty of our annual meeting. That's a private event. So when we talk about private and public events, I chose not to go to a public event recently because it didn't say to stay safe, make sure you're fully vaccinated, et cetera. So I chose not to go to that. But we have an obligation to the town of Plymouth as town meeting members. Over half, I did the numbers today, the best I could tell, since we've had COVID here for so long. Over half of our current town meeting members have not been able to participate with each other in an in-person town meeting. And just like wrestling said, there's a lot to be said of all the chaos that we've ensued over the last couple of years and that we will ensue if we don't have a reasonable, effective town meeting. It's our obligation to our citizens to do the job we were elected to do. So that's the way I feel about that. And I totally agree with wrestling and others. Plymouth North High School can seat 800 people. There's only 162 of us. I mean, for God's sakes, we can spread out. We can use the mezzanine. So be it. And there's so many other things I'd like to say, but I don't want to belabor the point. But I do want to read the beginning I've gone over section 10 and 10A of chapter 39 several times, and I've consulted with various lawyers. We have a lot of lawyers in town meeting, which is good. And they have varying views, but on some things we all agree. This is from section 10 of chapter 39, because the lead-in wasn't read. Whenever the moderator determines the voters are being excluded from the town meeting because there is no room for them in the places provided, or that voters in attendance are being deprived of the opportunity to participate therein for any reason whatsoever, he shall either on his own motion recess the meeting for any reason, for any period during the day of the meeting, or after consultation with the members of the Board of Selectmen, then adjourn the same to another date, no later than 14 days following the date of said meeting, when places and facilities sufficient to accommodate all voters attending. Well, we all know we're going to have sufficient facilities the day we go to town meeting on October 15th at 8 a.m., and I hope the meeting will be called to order. And there is no reason in my mind that we can't do the business of town meeting. And if I were really sick, I wouldn't go to town meeting. And if I felt that I was so at risk, I wouldn't have run for town meeting. I would have, after 30 years or so of being town meeting member, my day would have been done. But I chose, and I choose to participate. I have my mask with me, but everybody here is spread apart. But I use my mask in the stores and whatever, when I really feel I have to do that. But I chose to run for town meeting knowing what is out there. So be it, and that's our obligation. Thank you very much.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Hello. I'm Elise Bruno, Chair of Precinct 18. I just had a couple comments I wanted to make on this. The first is I filled out the survey for how I wanted to do the format of town meeting, but I was never reached out to by the moderator. So I'm just kind of curious who he's reaching out to for these results. And on that note, I think if we're going to use survey results as data, as supporting evidence for arguments that affect the whole format of an open democratic process, those survey results should be as publicly available as they can. Otherwise, we're really just going off the word of one individual who can have bias towards the situation, and I don't think that's really how this process should be presented. So my question is, I don't know if there's a way going forward that we can have some kind of clause that results for surveys that are used as evidence and data should be made publicly available, at least to the select board and the town meeting members at the very least. My second comment is that the moderator mentioned that he toured Plymouth North High to figure out how accessible it would be for everyone, but he didn't invite, at least not me, didn't invite the town meeting members or the select board, who I feel like if he's going to consult and talk with us, we should all be involved in that meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We did do a survey. Hold on just a second. The town did do a survey, and our results, I think, did you post them, Derek? And it was 60.
We didn't post them.
Yeah.
We talked about them
Right.
publicly.
Publicly.
62% were in favor, 38% were against,
Right.
and that was, I think, 95 respondents.
Right. So our portion of it
That was
was,
the town survey. I know the moderator had a separate survey earlier, a couple months back.
Correct.
Sorry, I should have clarified. I meant the moderator has said he's done 2 surveys now. Those haven't been presented, but I also didn't know you guys posted yours. I'll look at that
Right.
too.
Thank you. Mr.
Madam Chair,
Moderator.
if I might respond? Yes, thank you. First to Mr. Brewster. Mr. Brewster, I intend to be in the Center for Performing Arts on the day of town meeting. But in response to the last speaker, and thank you for your question, I've not conducted any surveys. The assistant moderator earlier this year, after the June town meeting, did conduct a survey, and the results of that survey, which were made available to the Committee of Precinct Chairs, was approximately 50% in favor of in-person and 50% opposed to in-person or supporting virtual. What I have been doing is, since the last meeting with the select board, when there was discussion about not using surveys anymore, I decided on my own to start calling town meeting members. I have not called all town meeting members yet, and I don't know if I'll get through the list, but I have focused initially on those who responded to the survey and wanted to be virtual, because they were the ones that would not be in favor of this, and I want to understand what their concerns were and whether they still felt the same way. And so I have called approximately 50 or more people, and those people continue to want to be remote. Some of them, and I'm trying to give them a voice, some of them are here this evening remotely. I see both Mr. Neely and Ms. Holmes, and finally, I would just say, in the effort to try to give a voice, I have another town meeting member texting me saying there are still deaths in Plymouth, or reminding me that 50% of town meetings said no to in-person. So, I encourage these people to speak to the board now so that you hear the other side, which is what I'm hearing. And again, I'm trying to balance everyone's concerns and trying to come up with a reasonable outcome.
Could you please just state your name for the record?
Maureen Renault, Precinct 6, town meeting member. I can't speak for all the people that are compromised and have ill health. I'm one of them. I take a shot every day to suppress my immune system. And I need to take a lot of precautions, and I do. And I couldn't appreciate Moderator Trifoletti any more than I could in the beginning, because it really helped me. And we still have COVID, but it's not the same as it was. And it really is time to get back to normal as much as we can. And people like me, we have to navigate our lives, and we don't have to bring everybody with us into the closet. We need to do this, and I feel very fine about the town meeting and going to the town meeting. And I might be in the main room, I might be in a mask room, but I definitely feel safe going to it. I do feel very bad for somebody that can't make it, and I'm hoping in the future that it would be possible, if somebody was really sick and was really afraid of getting it, or that perhaps a doctor's note could say, hey, you're the guy that can Zoom in. It would be a small amount of people that would be doing that. And in the future, I think it's going to be treated long-term. I think we're going to have it, and we can't go on like this forever. And I do appreciate, Moderator Trifoletti, what you've done, but I don't think that we need to do it at this level anymore. I think it's a personal thing for somebody to do, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just one last quick question then. Mr. Moderator, where are those results posted then, if you said that they have been made available to the public?
I indicated they were available to the Committee of Precinct Chairs. We gave them the results. Nicole Manfredi is the assistant moderator. And if you send me an email, I'd be happy to provide you, to have her provide you with the information. My email is fst@plymouthlaw.com. Be happy to provide that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Ginny Davis, Precinct 4. I speak today as a town meeting member with at least 18 years, as a registered nurse for almost 55 years. If I was sick, whether it was 20 years ago in 1988 or on the day of October 15th, I have a fever, I might be throwing up, whatever, I wouldn't be doing town meeting anyway. So if you're really sick, doing town meeting takes a lot. You're right, you're like, you have your books over here, the clicker over here, you're reading, you're listening, you're watching. If I was sick, I wouldn't even attempt to do town meeting. And that's just what life has handed to us forever. And I am so concerned that 50% of the people who got elected have never been at a town meeting. They have no idea what it's like to be there, to say hi to people, to meet people. I've lived here all my life. I don't even know most of the new town meeting members. You get to know them when we meet in person. We have lunch, we take a break, we can go outside. It is a total experience. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Do we have people online?
Madam Chair, we have Richard Neely and then Catherine Holmes.
Okay. Mr. Neely, welcome.
Thank you. I am a town meeting member of Precinct 15. As far as COVID being, we are not out of the woods. Because of my physical condition and a number of health issues, I have had to go to 3 different doctor's offices this past week. They are all wearing masks. Why? Because they still have a healthy respect for this virus, despite the ad hoc version of the CDC judgments. The hybrid meeting is necessary for the functioning of this town. The hybrid meeting is a modern response to the practical problems that this town is now facing, including COVID. I would like to sincerely appreciate the efforts of our town moderator, who in his efforts to provide the safest possible environment so that all members can participate without any threats to their health. I would mention one other item that has not received the appropriate attention during this conference, and that is everybody, all town meeting members, all select board members, all finance committee members should all be vaccinated, and that proof should be checked before the beginning of the meeting. Thank you.
I'm fully vaccinated, just so you know.
Thanks for that.
Ms. Holmes?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So since the COPC was brought up a few times in this discussion, I wasn't planning to speak on this, but I'm going to jump in here and just provide a little bit of clarity for the things that I just think we need to just make sure we're all singing from the same sheet of music. So historically, the COPC has always done and has driven all of the surveys regarding town meeting format. Precincts have done their own surveying. And then when I took over as the chairwoman, I have a survey tool. And so I started doing some formal surveys so that we could really get some real results and most importantly, be able to share those results with the town. It's very important for transparency. I didn't want anyone to think that numbers were skewed or that there was any type of bias at play. So I've done, I think, 2 surveys with the COPC. And we've always gotten right around 50%. It's like 49, 50. Like it waffles back and forth on what the town meeting members were interested in doing for either remote or virtual. And those were typically our two questions. When we offered a hybrid in the surveys, most people said hybrid would be great. But if you can't have hybrid, then let's do virtual. And then the people that were hardcore wanting face-to-face always voted the same. So we would get like 51 to 49 or 49 to 58 or 50, 48 to 52. And so it really wasn't, it was pretty split right down the middle. But the other piece of this is the number of people that we surveyed. So in order to, I have a mosquito. In order to make sure that we were getting the voice of town meeting, the chairs took an initiative to reach out to all of those people and make sure, to reach out to the town meeting members to make sure that they were responding to the surveys. Now, some people didn't want to, and that's totally fine, but we really tried to drive the results. And it's very important because when you look at the current survey that's been done, and that was the first time that was actually managed by the town, there was only, I think, 95 people that responded, but we have a lot more town meeting members. So when we've done our surveys, we would typically get about 120, 119 people that would respond. Those are pretty good numbers for a survey, but it took a lot of effort because we really wanted to make sure that we were getting the voice of the people. So I think that there are some definite flaws in the last survey that were done, and one of them is that it just doesn't have enough people that are town meeting members to give a good number. When I've looked for results that are coming in, oftentimes when we had lower numbers, it would start to skew a certain way, and then it would start to skew another way. But if the more people that responded, we started to get that kind of 50-50 split. So I think that the bottom line, though, is that there is a huge group of people, rightfully so, that want to get back face to face, and I completely support that. I am a person that has compromised immune system. For those that know me, I have pretty major asthma, and I also have compromised family members. However, we are fully vaccinated. I just got my booster a couple days ago, and all of my family is now doing the same thing as well. So we had a graduation at Manamet Elementary School for my son, and there must have been 200 people in the room. Nobody was masked. So there is a way that we can do this successfully. So I wanted to just say that regarding the surveys. And then, excuse me, I am questioning the locations. I like the idea, I know that we cannot have a face-to-face meeting without putting some type of conditions in place for these people that are immune compromised or that are just not comfortable. We need to be able to do that. I'm questioning the location, though, and this is, I'm going to put on my technology hat. And so if we have these locations split up, where we have a majority of people at the Center for the Arts, and we have other people that are in high school and other people, I'm concerned about delay. And packet loss and delay and connection and quality of connection, just because it's all piecemeal and it's never been done before. When we've had virtual meetings before, it's in one central medium, it's a controlled medium, it's at PAC TV, everybody knows what that's like, we've tested it. We certainly have had issues in the past with Fall Town Meeting. I think it was Fall Town Meeting, the first one that we did, where it was a debacle. We've also had a presentation forum that was run that we couldn't actually go forward with it. So I think that if we're going to do this, I definitely like the idea of putting a room for compromised people, and I like the idea of having town meeting members in one room. I would like to recommend that we put them back at the high school, because that's a forum that we know, we understand. And I think that we certainly, if we don't do that, if the moderator decides that for all the reasons he cited that is not what he is amenable to, I think that we absolutely need to have some test calls to make sure that this is actually technically possible, because I'm deeply concerned about the technology, the way that it's set up, knowing how many different connections we're going to have in a Zoom platform, which is not an executive platform that we're using. We're still using, from what I understand, a pretty basic Zoom platform. So those are some of my points. And then also, I just wanted to talk about some precautions. I think that there's a new booster out that covers Omicron. I'd like to see if maybe if the select board would talk possibly to the Board of Health to see if maybe it would make sense that before we do town meeting, maybe we could have some booster clinics here in town, so that people that want to can just go, like I think they've done this in the past, where they can go and get their booster shots, so they don't have to actually go to the tool and schedule it with CVS. Maybe we can have a format where they can just come and have the Board of Health work that out for us. And then also there was a question regarding, there was a question about the cost of doing the virtual, and it was like $20,000. And I may have missed this, but I would love for someone to explain that dollar amount, because I think regardless of whether we are we need to understand the cost of that. That's a lot of money. When Larry Piser's done town meetings in the past, I think it was like under $5,000 for the total town meeting face-to-face. So if
No.
someone could provide some insight to town meeting on where we're getting the 20,000, that would be helpful. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that I think that we have to get through fall town meeting. I really want to see us back in a room, but I want to make sure that we're safe. And the focus has got to be the legislation to ensure that we have a hybrid option for the spring. And I know that Susan, Kathy Lenatra and Matt Moratori, our representatives, have been working on that. But I think it's really important to try to get some type of an update from them, maybe in the next 30 days or 60 days, so that we can talk about where they're at with it. And I know it's going to take quite a while, but that absolutely has to be a #1 priority. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. I know I went long.
Catherine, I
Madam
just
Chair, could I
wanted,
respond?
sure, after I do. Catherine, just so you know, that the Center of Performing Arts is in Plymouth North High School. That's the auditorium. It's always been at Plymouth North. And as far as,
Well, thank you for clarifying that. I thought that he was talking about downtown at Memorial Hall.
no.
But okay, that's excellent news.
And
I
then-
was like, what the heck?
And then as far as the cost, I think that it's always been around the $20,000 mark. That's just the cost of doing business for town meeting. And Mr. Brandisi, if you could elaborate.
Yeah, sure. So we've been working with PAC TV and OTI on the costs if the town meeting were to be delayed. So you all probably are aware that in the PAC TV agreement, we have both annual town meetings, both in April and October, is covered in the already existing payment to PAC TV. But if the meeting were to be delayed, it would cost an additional $20,000 to have a follow-up town meeting because of the 14-day delay. So that would be PAC TV and the OTI costs. And since I have the floor, if I could just answer the question Ms. Holmes asked about our state delegation, I had reported at the last meeting that I had talked to Rep. Muratori. He had said that the bill needs to be refiled in January, and he would anticipate it would take the full formal session in order for that bill to hopefully be approved. So we don't anticipate the annual town meeting in April to be a hybrid model. We would expect that we'll be having a very similar conversation in April that we're having this evening.
Mr. Helm?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple points, given the recent discussions. Something about these surveys has bothered me for a number of weeks, and I've just kept my mouth shut. I know that our select board, the one that the town manager performed, asked participants if they would prefer in-person or virtual. In terms of all of them, CPC or COPC or Moderator Trifletti's, I've not seen or heard any results of the follow-up aspect of a survey like this. Why would you prefer it to be virtual? It's assumed that the people who want virtual are doing it because of COVID concerns. That's an assumption. That creates a flaw in the survey. So I would just like to point out the surveys that we are all talking about are plain old flawed. And we should no longer pay attention to them unless follow-up questions in those surveys to determine why. And I think possibly in the future that will be valuable when we have hybrid. Secondly, in terms of technology, I thought that Ms. Holmes made a really good case for 2 rooms and only 2 rooms. Technology. and the flaws and the delays by having the people who are going to be answering the questions that are asked by town meeting members in another room, technology problems can occur. I'm not saying they will, but they likely will, because they usually do. And it is inefficient and it's ineffective to have that group in another room. This group is probably 30 people, maybe. Okay. We're talking about an auditorium of 800 seats. Most of us have been in there. Most of us know how big and cavernous that space is. I would just like to ask the moderator to please consider 2 rooms and not separating out the boards, the town employees, the Finance and Advisory Committee into a separate room. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes, please, sir.
Yes. Thank you, Catherine Holmes, for your comments. And I had the same explanation that Betty Cavaco provided you, except I'd also add, when I referred to the library, it was the library at the high school. So it's all 3 rooms are at the high school. Your suggestion about shots is a good one, but I just want to say that unlike a private event or other public events, we cannot require testing. These people are elected and they can come to town meeting regardless of whether they take a test that morning. In fact, I asked about offering to take people's temperature, but that'd be voluntary. We can't require that people be vaccinated. In fact, we can't require that people wear masks, but we can provide a room where we say that you don't enter the room without wearing a mask. And finally, Harry Helm, I agree with you about surveys and they can be flawed. And I agree with follow-up, which is exactly why I took it upon myself to call town meeting members who answered the survey requesting a virtual, because I wanted to make sure for myself that in fact it was accurate. And those are my findings, is that the people that I called were in fact overwhelmingly in support of the remote participation. Those people that I called, I haven't called all town meeting members. Thank you.
Are there any more folks? Mr. Mahoney.
Yeah, the town, Stephen, Ms. Holmes, I think she wrapped up her comments by saying that we needed to get through town meeting, and I couldn't agree with her more. I think it's imperative that we get through town meeting. I think that, I know that what happens is the select board, the Finance and Advisory Board, they weigh in on articles. And then after they weigh in on the warrant and on all those articles, it becomes, the relationship between the moderator and the 162 elected members of town meeting who make up our Congress. So I think the focus point should be on them and their safety in this process. I have no problem taking a back seat. I can count on one hand all the times that I was requested to get up and speak on town meeting floor to a specific issue. Typically, I think that if town meeting wants somebody from the select board to weigh in, I think the majority of the time it'll fall to the chair. But if there's specific issues that maybe the other 4 select board members are passionate about, maybe they will get up and speak or knowledgeable about. But I have no problem taking a back seat. When we look at the 6 articles tonight, and this is reinforcing what Ms. Holmes said, and I agree with, you talk about we have to get through October town meeting. Some of these have to do with the U.S. Constitution, and I'm talking about public versus private property rights. Chief Foley is in the second row today. Article 8, he's got to acquire something off a state road. Some of these people, whether it's by eminent domain or you're just engaging in a regular straight-up real estate purchase, that gets delayed for months, they might pull out. That might compromise this town's ability to provide public safety, water resources, recreational value, et cetera. So it is imperative that we get through this fall town meeting. I I would fully expect that you would get together, Mr. Trifoletti, continue to work on what you need to do, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 rooms. I'm comfortable with any number of those, and work with Mr. Brindisi and the rest of town staff, and let's get into that room. Let's get into that building on October 15th, doing what we need to do.
Mr. Helmut?
Perhaps Selectman Mahoney has misunderstood the concept that I am proposing about having everyone in the auditorium, that being the FinCom, the Select Board, and the town employees that will be speaking on these articles. While Mr. Mahoney may have only personally been called on a couple times, I would say that it is common that Lynn Barrett is called on at least a couple times every single meeting. It's common that Mr. Beater is called on at least a couple times every single meeting. It is common that the police chief, that the fire chief are called on often during meetings. Mr. Gould will probably be called on several times during this meeting. So I appreciate the fact that you're willing to take a back seat. And if you want company, I'll take it with you, just as long as everybody else is in with the town meeting members. You and I can sit in a room together because I know no one's going to be asking me a question. So, so while I appreciate your willingness to take a back seat, I do not think that people such as Mr. Beater, Ms. Barrett, Mr. Gould, the chiefs, should be taking that same back seat as you are.
Mr. Blitzer?
John and Harry, this board voted unanimously for a in-person town meeting. And our moderator's going around us to try and get this, spread this out to, it's really going to affect, having us, and it's not going to be the same having all the department heads and the boards in a separate room. It's not what we wanted. So I think it's time that we have to test the power of the moderator. Because if not, it's going to be virtual next time. And we're going to have the same fight in the spring. So I ask our town manager, can we try and exhaust every avenue to try and make this happen in person? And I don't mind having the one room. The one room is fine. But having the multiple rooms I think it's just too much. I won't be for this unless I'm sitting with the town meeting members in the auditorium. You're going to be in there, Steve. We want to be in there too. So I don't know what we can do, Derek.
I mean, we have the ability, I think someone mentioned the library seats 160. The individuals that feel like they're at risk, there's plenty of space to socially distance, to wear masks, to have hand sanitizer, and anything else that our Board of Health and the Health Director recommend as protective measures for those individuals. So, we can make anything happen.
If Steve's not going to back down from the 3 rooms, I don't want to back down from the 2 rooms. So we're at a standstill here. So, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to have the same fight. It's going to be the same thing in the spring. In two meetings ago, it was going to be our last virtual meeting. And here we are again 2 meetings later. So.
What, if the board is finished, and I'll certainly go back to the public, I hope, Mr. Moderator, you realize how divisive this is to our form of government. And there is really no reason why we can't have 2 rooms, have in person, people that are uncomfortable. I'm not much of a backseat person, so you enjoy that. But honestly, I guess it's really right now, Mr. Trifoletti, with all due respect, is where the rubber hits the road. And are we going to have an in-person town meeting with 2 rooms? Are we going to continue to rip apart this form of government with, I have the authority, you don't, it's my rules, it's not? We're all doing this for the best of what's good for Plymouth. We need to work together. We need to stop this. So let's move forward together. Let's do 2 rooms. And you know what? If for some reason it doesn't work, we'll deal with it as it comes up. But technology-wise, everybody knows, it's no surprise, we've had issues with technology. So, right. Yes, I can. So I think it really is, I think we need to show that we want what's best, and we want our folks to know that we are listening to them. And I think it's honestly like, if we're not going to be the voice of these people, what are we doing here? Because I could be home watching, 90 Day Fiancé right now. So, yeah. or a good episode of Games of Thrones. I mean, I think it's important that, like, we put all of this aside, do what's best, let's go for 2 rooms. I mean, you're an intelligent man, you know how to work it, you've done a great job in the years that you've been a moderator. This is not a hill that any of us want to die on. And I think that let's work together and get there. Let's do 2 rooms, let's do the auditorium and the library, and just kind of move on and stop like tearing everything apart here, because that's exactly what this is doing. I mean, my phone's blowing up saying, blah, 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 we shouldn't be fighting with each other. We should be working together for what's best for the town. And right now, this town, no matter who you've talked to, because I can tell you I've talked to probably double the people that you've talked to, but it doesn't matter because I can't quantify that. So let's just do it. Let's agree to do it and do in person, and then move forward, and we're going to have a happy town meeting, and we're going to have happy people, and we're going to have people that feel threatened in another room, and let's just get the town business done. So I implore you to move forward with this 2-room with this 2-room meeting.
One more thing to say.
It could be 3 rooms for John. He might want his own room.
Stephen, you do a great job as a moderator, okay? But in this situation, you're not listening to the people, okay? And that should be part of you have to listen to the people. And the people they want an in-person meeting. We wanted it last time. And you're going to have to give in a little bit. And you just go to the 2 rooms. It's a compromise, a little compromise, but the department heads all should be in the same room as town meeting, and the boards. And you can put the challenged people, the people that, have some health issues, they can put masks on in the other room, 2 rooms. So you got to compromise and give in, Stephen, so we can make this thing happen, all right? Let's not fight over this anymore. Thank you.
If there aren't any more comments, this will be, no. Okay.
Steve Lyden, 1 room, 2 rooms, to me, it doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is what goes into this town meeting. And a lot of people don't understand. I sat through 5 hours at a meeting, listening to our fire chief, telling us how important it is with his articles he's putting forward. Not only are they important, but he's managed the prices on the new fire equipment is unbelievable. He's managed to, 18 months out, 2 years out, and he's managed to freeze the prices until delivery. You had a lot of department heads come in and tell you how important their articles are. And, delay it 14 days, it's just, there's a lot that goes into it. David Gould was there, the police chief, all the department heads that have articles before town meeting. They put a lot of work into this, and it's not frivolous work. It's very important. It's going to cost the town money if town meeting gets delayed. And I think it's not good for the chiefs and the department heads to see this going on, all this work, and, oh, well, it might go to pot because, well, not pot, but it might go because we don't meet a town meeting. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you back there.
Martha Votrain, Precinct 4. I've been to many of these meetings, and it seems to me that the two spaces is the way to go, and using the library that seats 130 or accommodates that many would easily accommodated the people that are town meeting members that would like to be in a setting where they're very socially distanced, et cetera. And as I understand from what Steve said, there are 6 to 7 people that are the only ones that don't want to come to a building. But if they were accommodated in the large space that would be for them, half the library, I would think that that would be the way we can accommodate those people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I respond to that?
Sure.
I just want to clarify, thank you, Martha. Those 6 or 7 people are people that won't even come to the library or in the building. Those are people that will check in outdoors but will not stay. But there are many other people that will come but will want to be in a separate room, mask only. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. My name is Dave Golden, Precinct 7. We've spent a lot of time tonight talking about 1 room, 2 room, 3 room. I'm not really seeing how there's a difference between sticking us in multiple different rooms and a hybrid town meeting. But more importantly, I'm deeply concerned about a comment that I heard prior to departing the room for another meeting. I believe I heard Mr. Trifletti say that every town meeting member would need to pre-register in order to speak at an in-person town meeting. And I certainly would happily receive clarification from Mr. Trifletti, but I'm concerned that every effort that he's made to control town meeting has been to really stunt our ability to debate the issues before the town, and that's what I believe these conversations are about. It's about control. It's about making sure that we have an expedited and very rushed town meeting where members aren't able to fully debate the issues that are before us. And so I would like clarification from that. And specifically, I would like to know if someone makes a comment under an article that I haven't pre-registered for, am I able to respond to that? Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, if I might respond, and Mr. Golden, thank you for your question. I apologize if it was my comments were misunderstood, but I've always maintained a speakers list with people who contact me in advance, and I endeavor to call on them first if they haven't already spoken on another article. And what I was hoping to telegraph to people is that at this town meeting, more than ever, if we're not going to have the voter, which provides me with a list of people that wants to speak and the time in which they are indicating their interest in speaking, that it would be helpful if you let me know in advance on articles in which you want to speak, because I'm going to be trying to navigate the recognition of town meeting members in 2 different rooms. And so if you're in one room and Mr. Brewster's in another room, it'll be helpful to know in advance if you wanted to speak. But certainly, if you haven't notified me in advance, you'll certainly be called on if I'm aware that you want to speak and if town meeting hasn't closed debate. But there will be new protocols in place. We won't be having long lines in front of a microphone. And as we get closer to town meeting, I'll explain, but we're only going to want 1 person at a microphone, although we'll have, I believe, at least 3 microphones for town meeting members in the one room and at least 1 in the other room. Thank you.
Sorry to come back up. I'm not sure that that's at all acceptable, Mr. Trifletti. If you're not going to allow people to get up in line, to stand up before their constituents and speak their mind, what is the point of having a town meeting?
And again, Mr. Golden, I apologize. You certainly will have the opportunity to get up and speak at a microphone. What I'm suggesting is that at some prior town meetings, we've had long queues at the microphone, and we're going to avoid that. and we're going to have only a few people up at a time, but everybody will get a chance to speak until such time as you, as the town meeting members, move to close debate.
Go ahead, sir.
Bill Arienti, I'm chairman of Precinct 6. Mr. Trifletti, with all due respect, first we had the book, the Chromebooks, then we had the 3 rooms, now we have this with no lines at the microphone. Can you read off the list of restrictions that you have so we can address them all right now and just get this all over with and just make it work? Thank you.
Mr. Canty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. So we've had a lot of discussion tonight about the format of town meeting, whether it's going to be 3 rooms, 2 rooms, things like that. To me, I understand people's passion about that. I think that there is a significant benefit to as many people being in person in one room as possible. And I don't fully understand why, if you have a room where you're in there because you're comfortable being in the general room, and then there's another room where you have to be in there with a mask and can be safely distanced, why that wouldn't be sufficient. If the library isn't big enough to be the catch-all for everybody else, I mean, there's a gym at the high school. You could put them in there. There's got to be more room in there because there's not a lot of bookcases and other obstructions. So there's other physical spaces that you could do it to have it in the 2 rooms. That's just my 2 cents as to that. That's a discussion that is above my specific pay grade, which I would point out continues to be $0. What I would most importantly want to point out is that during this back and forth about the when of town meeting and the how of town meeting, there's been a lot of confusion created in the what of town meeting. Because for example, the Advisory and Finance Committee has been meeting for the last month. Tomorrow we have our last meeting before our print deadline to hear these articles and issue recommendations to town meeting members. I have also reached out to the precinct chairs to get their caucus information so I can send my members there. Often, precinct chairs will start little impromptu surveys of when their membership is available, and I've seen more than one member in those little chains that I'm CC'd on saying, well, isn't the moderator just going to continue it for 14 days? So why are we having a caucus? What's that going to look like? What's even the point of this? You know, and you're disincentivizing this brinksmanship that people are engaging in is irresponsible, and it is disincentivizing the people that need to be informed, paying attention now, from doing so because they don't think that it's going to actually happen. And that's really, no matter whether it happens on the 15th or not, which it should, because there's no reason it shouldn't, and it needs to, it's tremendously unfortunate that this is happening in this way and that this can't be resolved in a way that every other community seems to have figured out. But we, for some reason, can't. We have more schools than most communities, more big spaces that we could spread out in. I don't understand why this is such an insurmountable task. It's really discouraging. Town meeting has its benefits and its drawbacks, but frankly, there have always been these pressure points and straining points in town meeting. We don't need an additional one being created by how is it even going to happen? Who's going to do what when? Do I need to show up? Am I just going to be driving right back home? All of this stuff is a truly significant and unnecessary distraction that I hope we can all move past, because this town meeting is coming up. People need to be prepared for it, and people need to have faith that their government is going to meet when it's going to meet. This isn't, the federal government shutting down in ways that is a disaster when that happens, particularly when it's all controlled by one party, but that's a different story that I won't get into. But we really need to get this done. We need to settle these issues. We need to move forward. It's 3 years now that we've been dealing with this. We know the rules. We know the risks. There's always been a risk in any public gathering, even before COVID, that you would get an infectious disease from somebody else that was there. Certain people have always had to take that into account. They can continue to do that. Everybody involved is an adult that either signed up for a job or an elected or appointed position that would involve something like this, and they need to be able to make those determinations and considerations for themselves. I trust they can do that. I trust that we can put in place reasonable guidelines to get this done, get past these distractions, move forward, and have this town meeting as scheduled at Plymouth North, which is where it has been historically for many, many years, and is the default setting for town meeting, absent a state of emergency, which has now passed. Thank you.
Mr. Treffelli, do you have any final
No,
thoughts?
just, Madam Chair, another precinct chair, Pompey Delafield, has joined remotely, and I'd ask the chair to recognize him if he wishes to speak.
Of course.
Hello.
This is the last speaker. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to very briefly say that I think that I've heard one side totally dominate this conversation. I do represent the other side. I am chair of Precinct 16 here in town, and I want to express the fact that I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Trifletti. I think he runs a very good meeting. I think it's very open. We cannot blame him when other people call to order. The conversation should stop, and until that happens, he always lets everyone talk. But in this issue, we all have a right to vote him out of office if we don't like what his decisions are. But while he's there, I think we should respect it. And I am surprised that the select board is saying that he's the one who has to give in. I think it would be good if we could just let him run the meeting. And then if we don't like it, then we can vote him out of office and get somebody else in who will run it differently. Thank you.
Mr. Hutchinson, I'm sorry. And Mr. Hutchinson is the last speaker.
I got up late. My apologies.
No problem.
Joe Hutchinson, Precinct 17. I would like to underscore Pompey's point and agree with Kevin entirely that this has to happen, that this is an important meeting. I also agree with Kevin that we're doing a little brinksmanship here between the executive branch of the government and the legislative branch of the government. And in the legislature, the moderator is actually the boss. And he's had the job, and as Pompey says, if you don't like it, vote him out. In the meantime, he's done what he can to try to come up with a negotiation. He's gotten the work done, he's calling the people, and let him do his job.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. And with that being said, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Thank you, everyone. Just so you know that we had to take a recess because our video feed was down. So, yeah, he's in the other room. So, all right, as we continue on.
Madam Secretary, before we continue on,
Secretary?
I'd like...
Did I get a promotion?
Madam Chair. Yeah, sorry. That's a television program also, since we're talking about those sorts of things tonight. I'd like to make a motion to reaffirm our vote from last week for the setting of the time and the place as we did and an in-person town meeting.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Discussion? Mr. Quintel?
I am going to support this, but in all government issues, debates, if you will, 3 rooms, 1 room, how about compromise, 2 rooms, and let's move on, please. Before you know it, it's going to be town meeting, we're still all going to be sitting here. So, you know. So,
Sounds good.
that's all I have to really say, compromise, let's get through it and move on.
I second that. All those in favor? Unanimous. All right, as we move on, fall town meeting articles.
That only took 2 hours.
That's why you get paid the big bucks. Fall town meeting articles, we're going to vote to approve and execute the warrant. Are we going to do that after these articles or now? Okay. All right. Article 8, property acquisition off of State Road, and I believe that is Chief Foley.
It is. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the board for having me tonight. Here to discuss Article 8, which is the article on town meeting to authorize the Select Board to take in possession a plot of land that is located adjacent to the Manomet Fire Station, 827 State Road. And I'll just give a brief synopsis as to why we need that land. This rendering right here, the red is the building. That's the existing fire station. You see to the left, there is a driveway that accesses the rear of the building. That's where the employee parking is, and is also a response bay that will be that is currently there, and we'll be expanding into 3 response bays to come out the rear of the building. The new addition that is part of the article that was voted on at the last Springtown meeting to do a major renovation of this station will encompass that existing driveway. And I can show you on these slides here, if I can get my clicker to work. Oh, got it. All set. So the addition on the left side of the building, if you're looking at that left slide, that's the substantial addition that's going to be added to the building, taking up that existing driveway. That's going to require the driveway to be moved to the right side of the building so that we can access the back. As you can see, the trucks rolling around the back. And also the fuel depot will be located in the rear of the building as well. The middle portion of that particular slide, you can see the existing lot lines, which is even more highlighted in red on the last picture. So as you can see with the existing lot lines that we do have, we're very, very constrained on that site. We knew this going into the last town meeting, and we did mention it as part of our presentation, that we were going to have to acquire some land from our abutter to be able to complete this project. We did have a preliminary conversation with our abutter to the north of us, and they did indicate that they would be amenable to providing that parcel of land that we would require. Through the negotiations process, which has really kind of ramped up recently due to the engineering and design moving along and the requirements that we were going to need, because we're going to have to incorporate some drainage and other structures. We went back to the abutter and asked to finalize or bring about a better understanding of what our needs and what they would be willing to do. Through that process, we have this proposal, which if you see the prop lot proposal up at top there, Lot D is the existing lot with the fire station on it. The proposed lot above it, and you can see that there's a drainage catch basin located within that that particular area. That's the plot of land that we are negotiating with the abutter. We do have some preliminary numbers. We're going to be asking town meeting to appropriate $90,000 to acquire this land. But as I said, we're still negotiating, and we'll go through the complete appraisal process with this as well before we actually purchase it. We're hoping to have a purchase and sale as soon as possible so that we can get this project out to bid by the first of the year.
Do board members have any questions for Chief Foley?
Can I add on one thing real quick to the chair, to that? Just, it's transfer of funds. There's no new appropriation needed. The $90,000 was appropriated at the last town meeting, so it's really just kind of a transfer of funds. It's not a new appropriation. So it's not a request for new money, just a quick add.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. This, like I said, this was anticipated, and it was budgeted in as part of that project.
Great. Mr. Mahoney?
So, Chief, that I'm seeing a little over 16,000 square foot, so at about 4/10 of an acre, and that's going to be everything that you need to facilitate, new construction or, down there.
Yes. Yep. So that plot of land is actually a little bit larger than we had first started with, and it does give us plenty of flexibility throughout this whole project and also into the future as well. What we found with our other remodels, especially right now in West Plymouth, the lot constraints do make it very difficult. So having that extra space or additional space will be very beneficial to the project overall.
And the existing site is only a little under an acre? 41,000 or 42,000 square foot?
Yeah, about an acre, yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that's sufficient room only because it's not Station 1. It's a satellite or?
It's a satellite station, correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Betty?
Yeah, Neil, also, after looking at that, it's going to be a lot more efficient too, because now you can drive the trucks in, they turn around and they drive straight in, so they're ready to go, before you had to back them in. Am I right about that? You had it on State Road, a busy road, you'd have to get the guys out in the street and have to back in. Now you're going to drive all the way to the back of the building, and you're going to turn around and drive straight through, so that's very important.
It'll give us that flexibility to do that. It depends on what kind of equipment we have running out of there. So adding the 2 additional bays, we might be able to have one of those bays to be a complete drive-through, which I would imagine being the most busy piece that we have there, which would be the engine. But looking, future looking, it's just going to give us that flexibility to be able to run out of both sides of it, should in the future we need to incorporate some additional apparatus.
All right.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you very much.
Next is a citizen's petition, Article 22, regarding horse racing.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Again, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Okay,
great. So thank you for taking your time out of your meeting to talk with me about this citizen's petition. I decided that it was really important to put this forward. I know that there's been a lot of work and a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations around the woodlot and what the group is going to do, whether or not there's horse racing that's involved in it or whether it's going to be something else. However, based on the non-binding vote that we had, and 88% of the residents of Plymouth saying that they didn't want horse racing, I felt that it was in our best interest to put something in place, or at least to be moving toward some further protections to ensure that horse racing doesn't come to Plymouth, even if it's not at the woodlot, but maybe some other location. So I'm just going to read a couple of things here. Have you all had a chance to look through the warrant? Yeah. I'm going to talk through this with you. So essentially, this warrant article is designed to direct our legislators, so Matt Moratori and Sue Moran, to file legislation that in this warrant article, which proposes to give citizens of Plymouth local control over the question of whether commercial horse racing can come to the town or not. So it's pretty straightforward. And in addition to the requirement, it requires that the select board be involved in that decision, which I think is really important. And that local control would be voted on at an annual town meeting, and it also would require a citizen's ballot, which would be a binding ballot. And so it's a home rule petition. And so for those that don't know really what that is, I just thought I'd give a little bit more clarity on this. So in Massachusetts, towns have limited powers under state law on something like this. So home rule petitions are the process by which a town or city can request that state legislation give it certain powers that it does not otherwise have. So in the town of like Plymouth, that request must come from a vote from town meeting, which is pretty important. So the state legislation and the Gaming Commission dictates where and how horse racing can be conducted in Massachusetts. We don't have a whole lot of say on that, and I think a lot of us kind of got that education. But the state law specifies what local control is possible. So, excuse me. So essentially what I'm asking for here is that the legislation would ensure that the citizens of Plymouth have the opportunity to decide whether horse racing shall be licensed or not. So a vote on the ballot, which would be a binding vote. And then for the purposes of this act, horse racing shall mean every meeting where horses are raced and where any form of betting or wagering on the speed or the ability of horses shall be permitted. And then most importantly, I think this is really what gives this, if we can get this passed, it gives us the meat, is that there shall be no license granted by the Massachusetts Gaming Commission nor any other state or local commission or agency for horse racing within the town of Plymouth, unless or until the select board shall approve such location after published notice and public hearings and a majority of the registered voters of the town of Plymouth voting on this on the described location relative to granting such licenses had voted in the affirmative within the same calendar year as such approval by the select board. And further, that the location of such horse racing be approved at town meeting. So if we can move forward with this, I think it's pretty critical because it would allow us to, excuse me, have control over potentially what happens at the woodlot, but even if the woodlot doesn't go through with horse racing, that if another entity comes forward and wants to have horse racing, we already know that the citizens pretty clearly don't want it. So this will allow us some protection. And I'm just going to stop there. I didn't do a formal presentation tonight because I thought it was pretty straightforward, but I'll just open it up to questions.
Mr. Helm.
Ms. Holmes, by binding, would you please define who is bound and what you mean by binding?
Well, so our state Matt Moratori, our representatives, and Sue Moran would then file that legislation with the state. And so if they're able to file it and get it approved, then that would become binding. It would become something that we would have control over.
No, I mean the vote of the residents of Plymouth. What or who is bound by that vote?
Well, so what we had put forward on the ballot was a non-binding vote, which meant that the vote didn't actually give us any authority to do anything, right? But
yes,
if
I'm aware of that. In your conception, in this article, what do you mean by a binding vote? I understand that the previous one was non-binding, which the board then took and did basically what we're supposed to do, but who's bound? Is the State Gaming Commission bound? Are you suggesting that? Or are you suggesting that the Board of Selectmen would be bound to issue a letter or notice of opposition? Who is bound?
Sure. So what my understanding of this would be is that all three of these components would have to happen. Town meeting would have to approve it. There'd also have to be approval from the residents of Plymouth. And then the select board would also have to be in agreement. So those three things would have to happen before we could agree that horse racing would happen in Plymouth. And if you want, Harry, if that doesn't, Mr. Hellman, if that doesn't answer your question, I can consult my attorney and get you more definition on really what the definition of bound would be.
I think it would be good, not necessarily for me, but for town meeting, for your discussion of this article, because when you begin to use words like binding or bound, it's good to know who is bound, particularly since we do have a state gaming commission that is involved in this, and this, in a couple of ways, as far as I could tell, could possibly be, dependent on who is being bound in this, in opposition to the procedures of the State Gaming Commission, which is fine with me. I don't, but I think it's good to know who is bound.
Sure, that's a fair point and a good question, and so I'll certainly get clarity before caucuses and town meeting on that, so that there's more definition around it.
Anyone else? Do we have a motion? Oh, Mr. Voltron.
Charlie Votrain, Precinct 4, Town Meeting Member. My question is to Catherine. I don't think I heard you mention the word gambling. All I heard you say was horse racing.
Right, gambling is not included in this. It's only horse racing.
Oh, I think you should add it, but that's my own opinion. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we have come to the realization that it's quite clear in the laws, especially with the research from KP Law, that it is under the Select Board's jurisdiction whether to approve horse racing or not. Not that I have any problem with this article, but just to clarify that it is under our jurisdiction to do that now, without this, so. Sure.
Mr. Votrain, the problem with if she added gambling is the citizens of Plymouth voted twice to legalize gambling in Plymouth, so they voted twice for it, so it would be kind of tough to put that together, so.
And the goal for me is to support what the voice of the Plymouth residents were, and it was simply around horse racing. And it didn't, I don't believe, Ms. Cavaco, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that ballot question had anything to do with gambling in it, right? It was just simply horse racing, right?
It was the ballot question, the non-binding ballot question was horse racing, but our letters to the Gaming Commission and the Attorney General did in fact discuss gaming and casino,
Right.
racinos, whatever, so.
Right, so, but I'm only representing the voice, in my effort here, I'm representing the voice of Plymouth residents who only spoke on horse racing, so that's what this article is to address at this time.
Okay. Mrs. Edelman?
Thank you. I understand that this article is only for horse racing. And like Mr. Bletzer said, the town people twice voted in favor of gambling. But how many years ago was that? And I would like to know how the board stands on gambling. Are you in favor of a casino or some kind of gaming facility anywhere in Plymouth? And that's what I find very disappointing, that you'll say no horse racing, but we don't know how you stand on gambling facilities. Thank you.
Well, go ahead, Harry.
Ms. Adelman, just in answer to your question, we've never been asked. Okay. We were asked in specific about the woodlot, and we acted per state statutes and unanimously voted against not only a horse racing track, but a casino facility. So in that one case where we were asked, we voted unanimously in opposition to a racetrack and a casino. If people would like to bring up another ballot initiative, or rather a warrant article sometime around on gambling, you're perfectly welcome to do that. And at that point, we'll be telling you about it.
Well, I would appreciate that. I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know if others would, but I think it's coming right down the track. It's obviously looks like the wood lot is what the Boston South people are participating for a gambling facility. And I just want the town to be protected. Thank you.
Well, you know, in reference specifically to that specific thing, the town is currently protected because our letter specifies not only a racetrack, but gambling. And, you know, whatever Boston South is up to, we'll find out on down the road. That's, you know, that's where we stand today, and our determination was specific to the woodlot.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Quintal?
Derek, has this been run through town council yet on the legality of this?
Town council has reviewed the entire warrant, yes, so
it's okay.
they've taken a look at this.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Didn't we?
Or do you want to speak?
No. I'm sorry, I thought there was already a motion. No?
I'll motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Mahoney and second by Mr. Helm. All those in favor?
Should we have discussion?
Oh, yeah, discussion, I'm sorry.
I think there was.
It's getting late.
I talked under discussion. I think John's right.
No, I don't, I just, the proper procedure.
No, I think we had a motion before this. I think I spoke under discussion, but
I could be wrong, I'm sorry.
Anthony?
We didn't have a motion before on this, right?
No? Okay.
So we haven't.
We're going to put you in another room, Mr. Mahoney.
Put me with you, John. I thought so too.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time tonight. Have a good night.
You too. Next is Article 9A, purchase open space off Carver Road.
Good evening, Bill Cohan from the Community Preservation Committee. And tonight we'll be presenting fall town meeting articles for 2022, starting with Article 9A, B, C, and D. I do have something that came in just a few minutes ago from Lynn Barrett. She had revised the budget that she provided me, that I provided you in your book. So if you would like, I can have this. So the numbers that we were working off of tonight are different from what your book is. What Lynn has spread out over is that each of these recommendations that we're making to town meeting will require, will be utilizing available funds on hand, except the Spire Theater. There will be a component of borrowing. There is approximately $2,231,705 that is available for the Spire. But the remaining balance would be borrowed, but it would be short-term borrowing. And the way that we'll be doing that is through a process of allocating certain money at a certain point in time based on a grant agreement and different performances of work. So we've done this before where we can operate from available funds as long as possible and then do short-term borrowing to accommodate that expenditure. But the others, 9A, B, and D, are from available funds. So we can start on Article 9A. Article 9A is an open space acquisition. I think over the last 7 years, we've been in conversations with the, it was at the time the Narragansett Council, that has now the owners are the Rhode Island Council. But the Boy Scout Council, we've been talking to them over 7 years, had different conversations about acquiring the property. We renewed those conversations this year. We had the property appraised. The appraisal came in at $900,000 for 99 acres. The Community Preservation Committee has determined that. In your packet, you'll see a memo with a article language in the action of the committee. The land is located off of Carver Road, Route 80. Best way to describe it, if you were to go out on Carver Road and you would get on Route 80 and head out past towards Sacred Heart. Before you come to Parting Ways Cemetery on the right, on your left, you'll see some town-owned land. Behind that is Camp Norse. The entrance to Camp Norse is a little pass going into Kingston past Sacred Heart on your left. This land is in West Plymouth, and this land directly abuts the town well, and it's out by Darby Pond, and again, it's 99.5 acres. The rationale for this article is really about water protection, drinking water protection. We have a well in this area, and we need to protect it. This area is also a community ground well, which is servicing the residents of Plymouth. It has been identified from numerous state agencies, state and federal agencies, as a groundwater and surface area of protection because we have Darby Pond next to our well. Town well is there. But this land that we're talking about abuts both properties, the Darby Pond and Darby Well. There are 2 zones in this area that we need to pay a great deal of attention to, where the cone of influence is, where we do activities that might, hamper a well's productivity and its water quality, and that's a Zone 1 and a Zone 2. This acquisition would protect both Zone 1 and both Zone 2. Those are the highest zones of protection that we want to pay attention to. It's been identified by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Affairs as a high-yield aquifer area. So anything we can do in this area is critical to that. As I mentioned, the priority that motivated us around this area was protecting the town well. Obviously, the town well, if it wasn't working, we'd have to establish a new town well, and we'd have to build millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure to redirect water services to different residents. So I think we're seeing all across the country where communities struggle with clean water. Plymouth is very lucky to be situated on top of the largest sole source, one of the largest sole source water aquifers in New England. So anything we can do to protect what's under Plymouth is in our best interest in terms of economic development. But there is a unique opportunity out there where we can create trailheads and parking areas for passive recreational activity. Out on Route 80, as you're heading towards Sacred Heart, on your left, there's been an area that we've identified that if town meeting does go forward and buy this property, we would build a trailhead with parking. I think if you've been to any CPA acquired land, you'll see that we build trailheads, and there's parking, and there's signage, and there's trails, and this would be for passive recreational areas. This would be for hiking around this parcel of land. We will not be promoting any active recreational. There won't be any baseball fields or soccer fields. This is all about water protection, but we want to allow residents to access the property and hike around the property. We are going to establish a buffer, where we will not build any passive recreational trails near the campground, because the Camp Norris will continue to be a campground. There's about close to 40 to 50 acres left of the campground where the Boy Scouts will camp. That being the case, we wanted to make sure that we didn't promote any hiking too close to their activities. We've offered to do this in exchange for a first right of refusal on the remaining acreage. So they have agreed that if we do buy this property, the remaining acreage that they control, if they do go to sell it in the future, we would get a first right of refusal on it. So we had an interesting discussion. Pleased to report back to the board and the community. The Narragansett Council, Boy Scout Council, was a pleasure to work with. They were a great partner, and now the owners are another council, and we're happy to report to the committee, the town, that those negotiations went well. You can see right here, I don't have a pointer, but you can see down on the bottom that orange area. The highlighted orange area are the parcels we're buying. Some of the acreage is contiguous and some of it is pieces that are broken off. Those broken off pieces are directly on Darby Pond and they're adjacent to currently owned town land. They look like they're kind of out there on their own, but there is town land there. To the far left corner, you can see the remnants of a bog that was dismantled that the town acquired a few years ago with David Gould out of Darby Pond. To the north, you'll see a large purple area. That large purple area in that pond there was Lake Providence, but now it is this area was owned by Sacred Heart. The Sisters of Divine Providence owned this land. There was well over close to over 300 acres of land. Our friends to the north, Kingston, in negotiations with the Shan Family Foundation, they were able to acquire and preserve all of that land that's in purple. So that's our neighbor to the north, an area of a cone of influence. So whatever they can do in Kingston to protect this area is going to protect that well, because you can see down by the orange, the round area is the well where the town is, and directly below that, that dark mass with the two little islands, that is Darby Pond. So you can see the massive preservation effort going on to our north with the Sisters of Divine Providence and the conservation efforts there. And you can see some town-owned land directly north of that orange patch. That would be the town-owned land next to Route 80. Then you see that dark line going through it. That's Route 80, and the light purple area is Parting Way Cemetery land, all owned by the town. So you can see we have a nice swath of land in West Plymouth that will make for a very interesting hiking, because you'll be able to hike from former Camp Norse land over to Parting Ways into this other conservation land in the town of Kingston up to Lake Providence. I don't know what the name is now. I think they changed the name, but that is the strategy on this acquisition. So if you have any questions, I can take them on Article 9A.
Mr. Mahoney.
Bill, where's the 40 acres that the scouts are going to continue to camp on and that we have the right of first refusal?
I wish I had my pointer. Ooh,
is there a pointer in the room?
There's a pointer in the room? No, I don't have a pointer. This doesn't seem to be working.
Anthony?
There seems to be a pointing, but it doesn't work on that wall. Do you see the round, well, that's there's some additional land next to it that comes down from camp. Part of Camp Norse is in Kingston, because you can see the Kingston-Plymouth line, and some of the land around there is in the town. So that 30 acres over there is in the town of Plymouth. 30, 40 acres remains in Plymouth that is part of Camp Norse. So that would be the area in which we would not be buying. It's the outlined orange parcel, not that other orange parcel. You see, maybe I can go up and touch it. Maybe that'd help.
So this is the piece that we're buying. Yeah, I think that's Anthony has it. Where Anthony is the piece that we're buying.
Where Anthony is the piece that we're buying. Now, if Anthony goes to the gray circle, okay, and to the west and south of that circle, you can see another orange piece and another dark piece, John. Those are the pieces that we're not buying that are still part of the campground. This is the Kingston side of Camp Norse, and then this is the remaining Plymouth side of Camp Norse. They still have access to the
So why are you highlighting the Plymouth side in yellow?
That was submitted by the applicant. They identified that, but the orange, the outlined orange is what we're buying.
Correct.
The unoutlined orange is what remains of Camp Norse in Plymouth.
All right, I thought those were identifying the purchases over the last few years of taking a couple of cranberry growers out of business.
Right.
They had land that was in proximity to Darby Pond and the well, and that's not delineated there?
That's not delineated there in this map. I can provide a more, I think, I'll probably have a better color map for town meeting.
So by doing this, especially with the two cranberry growers and this, I know the restrictions were lifted on that well where we were only allowed 400 gallons a day, and I think that was lifted once the second cranberry owner came out of business, and now we can take 800,000 gallons a day out of that well, if I remember that correctly.
Anyone else?
I have just one question. The land that you want to conserve, is it suitable for a well on that land?
Pardon me?
Would you be able to put a well on that land?
The idea is that we want to buy this land to protect the area around the existing well. See that gray circle?
Yes.
That's Darby Pond
No,
well.
I
So
get
we
that,
have a
yeah.
well there now. I don't think we could add another well. I'd have to
No,
check
no,
with
my
somebody.
concern was if we conserve this land and something happens to the Darby well, we can't put a shovel on the ground there.
Yeah.
That's my.
Yeah, so when you
and
use.
I figured because Darby Well's right there,
Right.
that land must be suitable, for wells, so.
So if this well was, if Darby well was to fail, the area, you'd have to find a dramatic location for your new well. You couldn't just move it a few feet away or 100 feet away. This land would be, if Darby well failed, this area would not qualify for a desirable location. We'd have to move, if the well failed, it would have failed for reasons that we would have to look at another location far away.
Okay, well, that was my question,
Yeah,
so it wouldn't
sorry.
be suitable.
Okay, yeah.
Anyone?
Steve Lyden, my question is, was the town ever notified that this land was up for sale? And did the town have a chance to buy this maybe for a new cemetery? With the first right of refusal on the extra 40 acres, would the town have the opportunity to buy that land since we're so short in cemetery space, or maybe another town use, rather than putting everything into conservation and going to the CPC? If the town needed the land, I think that the town should have the chance to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we ever had the opportunity or were notified, do you?
Well,
Sure.
this started years ago. I don't think there was no formal communication. This started years ago when the Scout Council announced that they were going to level 30 to 40 acres of trees on their property to put up solar farms to generate revenue. And I think some of us reached out to that council to establish a line of communication telling them that there were other ways of generating revenue. And the significance of this is the proximity of the land, obviously, to the well. Mr. Beater stood where Bill was a month or so ago and said, we're down 2 wells right now. We need 2 wells. So this acquisition is the third over the course of the last 5 to 8 years, strategically designed to get as much open space around this well. And I understand, the concern with respect to conservation restrictions moving forward, but the primary importance with respect to the community is protecting that well. There were restrictions on that. I wish Mr. Beater or Mr. Gould were here. Okay, for years, you could only take 400,000 gallons a day out of that well because of the influence of the water being taken out of the well by the local cranberry growers and the impact they had on it. And once those 2 growers their surrounding lands were taken out of play. I believe that the restriction was lifted, and we went from 400 to 800,000 gallons a day. And that's by buying land and putting it into conservation. And that map should delineate that, Bill. That, you know, if you can get that for town meeting, that is a significant variable that has to be communicated.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, is that a private road?
What was that?
Is that a private road?
Into this location?
Yeah.
Currently, it is. The entrance to Camp Norris is a private road and a private campground. So,
So we really don't have the right to use a private road to access town property, correct?
we can access this property from the north on Route 80 where we already own land. And then there is areas down on the lower level where there are roads that come in from subdivisions that are accessible to access it.
On the Plymouth side, because I think we've had residents here in front of us that have issues with the whole access to different properties
Right.
around Darby Pond.
Right.
So I want to be sure that we're not,
That's why we're advocating that we have that we build a trailhead on Route 80 to the north, away from residential areas. So not only would design walking trails in this area that would stay away from the campground, but it would be staying away from the residential units too. So we don't want to attract people into a residential area to park, to climb over someone's backyard to get to a public land. We think it's much better to be out on Route 80. It's safer because emergency vehicles traveling through this area can look over into the parking area and see who's there after dawn or dusk. And so it's much better to have a trailhead in a very visible location where it can be better managed. We're not promoting any type of access down into these areas that would bring people into neighborhoods where there's not suitable parking or access. But just going back to what has been touched on by John and Steve, that the town has to balance the events of land use around economic development. This is a form of that. Protecting our well is a form of economic development. So we try to use the Community Preservation Act in a strategic way that insulates and protects the town against uncontrollable cost. So it's if this well was to fail, we would be faced with an enormous cost trying to find a new location and trying to tie the town into that location. So I'm sensitive to what Steve has brought up. We're not trying to put all the land in Plymouth into conservation. We're trying to balance growth and development and protect our resources.
okay. Anyone else? Mr. Quinton?
Bill, I was just going to ask them my famous question. In the future, if the town needs to move water, would they be able to do it with this restriction if they had to, just say, go through the property after we're gone or something happened and they had to move water to another part of town? Would the restriction restrict that?
Development of the property, it does, but when we form a conservation restriction, we can put in there allowable uses. When Steve Cashew was here, he and I used to. Please turn your microphone back on. Sorry, microphone's back on. In the past, I'd worked with the engineering department. So after town meeting, we're drafting our conservation restriction.
Okay.
We're putting in allowable usages. Sid would always want to see what we were doing so that if he could buffer an area out for drainage or water movement or something of that nature that was allowable, we'd run that by the EOEA to see if they were okay with that. But we do try to, we have been doing this in recent years by working with the engineering department to make sure that our CRs are accommodating these drainage, water issues that might come up as the town grows.
I wasn't
around it.
referring to drainage, but I'm glad you're touching on that. I'm actually talking about piping, say. If they have to move water to another part of town, can they do it underground there?
You could theoretically
That's what
pipe
I'm
through this
asking.
area and then replant it, yeah.
Okay, that's all okay. Thank you.
All right, do we have,
So, Bill, that's, I don't like this map, okay? So I would shift that map up. The yellow and the orange would be shifted up into the center. And I think you have to delineate those two cranberry bog purchases because this is the third purchase. It's all about protecting that well. And I would just, I would delineate one of the Cranberry Bog purchases, where that is on the map, and maybe up at the upper left-hand corner, the date, the purchase price, and what you did there, and then the second one. And that this has been a series of proactively investing in land around the well to protect it, just so the town meeting knows the history there. Just a suggestion. I'll move approval.
Is there a second? All those, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Madam Chair, who seconded the motion?
Harry. Oh,
Thank you.
Charlie, I'm sorry.
Charlie, thank you.
Article 9B.
9B, before we go into 9B, I forgot we had actually a better map. There you go, John, it's a little bit better, but I will work on a better map.
Did you have to do that?
Okay, Article
There
9B.
we go.
this-
So just go back to the map. So what was in red?
That's what we're requiring.
We're requiring all that, and,
And-
okay.
So I'll work on
All
that
right, so we
map.
can see you can see where the well is, the rounded area up there. That's the northern on the map. That's the upper edge of the well.
Yes.
And then these cranberry
Oh,
bog
yep.
areas, and then
I-
they're down in that bottom left
Yep.
below the pond there.
Yep, I'll
Yeah,
work
you
on
want
it.
to add those in.
I will work on that. Article 9B, Spire Theater. It's a historical recommendation for the rehabilitation, restoration of an 1884 former Methodist church, former Beth Jacob Synagogue Community Center. It was acquired with CPA funding by town meeting in the year 2012. Since 2012, there was also money at that time, not only to buy the property, but there was money set aside for retrofitting the building with some updated safety features, fire suppression systems, ADA compliance. It was then leased to the Greater Plymouth Performing Arts for 100 years, beginning in the year 2012. They took over the building. They worked on these improvements to bathrooms, ADA-compliant bathrooms. They did structural analyses. They wrote grants. They received grants. They did a great deal of improvement to this building, its lighting, its sound, its heating, its cooling. They actually did a series of engineering reports to analyze the structural integrity of the building. It had some movement that was going on in some of the walls, and that had to be arrested. And they worked over the last several years raising money, dealing with these issues. So I do have Bob Hollis here tonight. He's going to get up and talk about some of the things that they've worked on and what they're working on. The recommendation is for $3.6 million. The committee recommended $3.6 million. The packet that you received has an analysis done by Sullivan Vogel. They are a building conservation specialist. They've spent several years working with GPAC, analyzing the historical integrity of the building and the site, doing estimates. We felt that we needed to go on the higher end at 3.6 because we are concerned about the bidding process. We wanted to make sure that they had the money to put this out to bid to do what they wanted to do. There was different numbers that was presented in their application. Those numbers were a concern to us due to the fact that we needed to be sensitive to the current economic conditions in terms of when you send out a request for a bid and how much it's coming in. So we want to make sure that we were covering what they wanted to do, because the work that they're planning to do is not only restoring the facade back to 1884 appearance. They've done a paint analysis of the building. They're going to bring it back to its original monochromatic colors of green and brown that were very popular at that time. This is going to be a great complement to our courthouse square, and the building that we're in today, the 1820 courthouse, is of the same era, 1884. Some of the colors that we found in the walls on the painting in the 1820 courthouse we found on the style on the building. Just like today when you drive around and you see a lot of colors on houses and buildings that look like HDTV, all kind of subway tiles and creams and silvers and grays. Back in 1884, they had a different palette, and it will be brought back to that palette. The community benefit has been significant with Aspire. They've been there since 2012. The updates they've done to the building, the shows that they're having attract a demographic that come to Plymouth. They spend time here in our hotels. They spend time in our restaurants. They spend time in our shops. The benefit of the arts in your community is quite significant. We've seen that with the Center for the Arts on North Street. That was a CPA acquisition. We came back a second time on the Center for the Arts, looking for additional funding to reconfigure their foyer and their entrance and their elevator. These two buildings complement each other, only a block and a half apart. They are kind of our arts renaissance in downtown Plymouth. They're diversifying the economic development opportunities in our downtown. You can see here, this is what the building looked like at around the time that it was built in 1884. You really can't see it because it's kind of a black and white, but you can see the features of the building. We're starting to see these features right now because we are working, right now the Spire Theater has been putting up staging. They're putting a new roof on at their cost. They were able to have a capital program in grant writing, and they were able to put their roof on. They're taking off pieces of the aluminum siding, and that is leading to an investigation of what's under the aluminum siding. What we're finding is that we have a significant amount of historical integrity in downtown Plymouth. This Victorian Queen Anne style, gingerbread shingle style building is very unique. The integrity of its facade is quite remarkable because after 60 years of covered with metal siding, behind it is something that hasn't been touched or seen in generations. So we have a lot to work with, and the building conservation specialists who are working with GPAC have done a great deal of analysis on the exterior facade, this expenditure will not only cover the exterior facade, but it's going to be just some structural work, not only in the steeple, because after over 100 years, the steeple is going to need some structural integrity dealt with it. There's some gable ends that you currently you can see some structural reinforcement on some of the gable ends. If you have looked at the building, you would have seen this. This is something that's been going on for some time where they modify it to arrest the movement in those gables, and once they stabilize them, that will be part of this restoration, the final stage stabilizing of the building. Here are some of the drawings where they're depicting the areas of restoration on the exterior, you can see here that it's the entire envelope of the exterior of the building, front, back, side, and as you can see, the building is of a significant architectural value. The request again is for 3.6. We looked at the application, we looked at the different requests that were being made, the grants that they were going after, their funding. We looked at the estimates they were doing, and we felt we needed to err on the side of caution at $3.6 million. If that money, the process will be that this will go out to, this will not go through the procurement process. Derek, the town manager, is here to speak on that if you have any questions. We've had an opinion rendered on the fact that when we bought this building, we conveyed it to the Spire Theater for nearly 100 years, and that would modify how we can utilize that funding. So if Derek wanted to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to elaborate if the board has questions. Would you like me to? Okay, so, yeah, so again, this is a town-owned property, as Bill pointed out. It has a 99-year lease agreement, and because it has a 99-year lease agreement, town council has opined that we will not have to follow the public procurement process. And the reason being is because when they look at a 99-year lease, they recognize that the 99-year lease will outlive the renovations of this facility. And so because it outlives the renovations of this facility, in essence, it becomes solely for private use, the renovations, and not for public use. So for those reasons, town council believes that we wouldn't have to follow the public bidding process.
But we would have to, the GPAC would be required to put it out to bid on their own, and that bidding process is something that will be overseen by the building conservation specialist. And the way that the grant will be awarded will be under an agreement at different phases, different amounts of work is completed, and we're notified at that point. Usually we tie it to the permitting process, that if they go out and do their electrical or their, for their framing or whatever they might be doing, they have to go through different stages on inspectional services, which will be triggering the grant release. That's kind of how we did the Center for the Arts in downtown Plymouth. So it was a grant agreement. The money was put in play. The same thing with the National Memorial Meeting House in Town Square. The money was a grant agreement. We set it up where we were able to short-term borrow and release the money in a manner in which we could control the verification, the work getting done, to the standard in which we need to see it done. So it would be done in a similar way that we dealt with the Center for the Arts on North Street and the Meeting House. Both of those projects, though, we allocated money for those projects, and the budgets came in. They put them out to bid themselves, and they did not draw down those accounts where the monies that they spent was less than what we had recommended at town meeting. So at the Meeting House and the Center for the Arts, there was money left over that reverted back into the CPA. So this is the way of, yes, we're allocating $3.6 million, but we're going to be very diligent on that process of keeping track of what money is going out, what it's being utilized for, and it can only be drawn down as much as the work is done. So I have Bob Hollis here tonight. Bob Hollis can kind of walk you through about the Spire Theater, who they are and what they do and how they do it.
I have a couple questions, though. This isn't going to circumvent the prevailing wage, is it? This bid process? And does this take in?
It would, yes.
It does?
It would, yes. Mhm.
But we would welcome prevailing wage to bid on it. We have funded projects. When we renovated the Sims House, it was done by a union shop. So we have put things out to bid at different times, and it was done. I think there have been other projects that we have given CPA funding for that was not town-owned, and they did end up using union contractors. So everybody's welcome to apply for these and put their bids in, but it's not an attempt to get around that process. We hope that union shops put in bids for this project.
So the problem with that is that through the bidding process, there is not a level playing field. Okay?
Right.
And it's highly unlikely that they will, with that prevailing wage isn't the baseline.
Right.
Then those individuals, those companies that pay that,
Right.
it's going to be non-competitive for them.
Right. But it was like that at the Center for the Arts on North Street in the Meeting House. And there are examples where we were able to, competitively accept bids from union shops. But
So if you look at the baseline at the state level, if you look at the model school program at the state level, they have that baseline. So when we executed North High School and South High School, half of those workers in each of those jobs were half a non-union, half of them were union, because it was a base level that everybody was bidding off of, if you will. There was a minimum required for, the fiscal package that you were going to give to your employee. And with this, it goes right out the window here, and I will turn it back over to the chair and.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you. I think the Spire Center has been a real point of pride for the last 8 to 10 years for the town of Plymouth. Here we've taken a building that really was not going to have any use at all, was in disrepair and becoming worse and worse. Now we had the opportunity to bring it back to what it looked like in 1886. We found, taking off a lot of that siding, that they had to remove a lot of the decorative molding and special architecture that, in order to put up the aluminum siding. A good part of this will be going towards that as well. But in doing this, we're not only preserving a building, we're bringing some culture into town, and at the same time, it's been a really, really great economic stimulator for the downtown. I know there's real estate people right now that will say, many people move downtown because they can come to a place, go see a show, go to the restaurant. You know, just the Greater Plymouth Performing Arts Center is the group that runs it. We are a volunteer board, but since that point, we've grown so much. Our budget is up to about $700,000 a year now. We have 2 full-time employees. We have an economic director. We have a marketing director. When we have shows on, we have probably 7 people we're hired to put those shows on, and many volunteers too. So it's not only done that, but we sell over 20,000 tickets a year now, and 70% of those people come from outside of Plymouth. We can tell because we have all of their zip codes when they do that. So it's been a tremendous boom to the downtown area and to Plymouth itself, culturally, economically, and now we're looking to do something from the preservation standpoint too. I was asked to give you guys an accounting, and I don't know if you got this from the CPC, but I can make copies available to you. Since the time that we were allocated the funds, we've raised $1,356,000 in addition to what the town did. What we got from Mass Cultural Council so far is $360,000. We've gotten from the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism $200,000 to go towards the building. We have $75,000 that was granted us to do all the preservation planning that we've been spending the money on. Now we've gotten $100,000 towards marketing. The Mass Historic Commission granted us $85,000 to do a lot of those emergency structural repairs. The Plymouth Charitable Foundation gave us $100,000 to the building just recently. And since that time, because we are a nonprofit, since we've been open, we pay our expenses out of our operating income, which is unheard of for a nonprofit. Most of the time, they rely on donations to do that. Since that time, any money that we're making over and above and any donations have totaled up to $436,000. So in total, we've raised $1,356,000. Where's the money gone? $362,000 to the structural reinforcement that Bill talked about. We put in $250,000 for an elevator. We had to do it, and it's become much more feasible in how everything works there. We did an interior renovation of $175,000. If anyone's ever been inside the Spire, it doesn't look like much from the outside right now, which is what we want to rectify. But if you go in the inside, it looks beautiful. Even during COVID, we were out of business for 16 months. We still did work because luckily we also applied and received $450,000 from the shuttered venues grant, which we can't use for the building, but it could be used for operational expenses, which allowed our income to go back into the building. We've put, you see the roof going up now, it's $175,000 we're doing right now. Sound and lighting systems of $145,000, air conditioning, electrical, $39,000, and the preservation planning. We've spent $1,221,000 since you've granted us the building. We've made something of it, and it's something that's going on more and more now, and as we go along in the future, this can become a jewel in downtown. Just opposite what we have here, you'd be looking out and seeing that. And with that, it's something becomes even more viable for what we can do, and I think it's a tremendous asset for the town of Plymouth. I hope you really support the article, and I can certainly make this available to, in fact, I have enough copies for you now, probably. Sure. And
Any
I'm available for
comments?
questions as well.
I have comments.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah, I have some comments.
You said it.
You know, we talk about revitalizing the downtown, and this is the start right here, the Spire Center. It's a gem, and right now it's in complete disrepair from the outside, and you know, it's an eyesore, but I can't wait, because there's people right now that take pictures of it. They still love it, even in the condition it is. But I can't wait for this to get done, get it revitalized. It's an important, number one industry in Plymouth is tourism. And the Spire Center is an important component for our tourism. What Bob said is true. People that go there, they don't just go there. They go to a restaurant first or a restaurant afterwards. And you can see it, you can see them coming and going. It's very important. We have the Memorial Hall that has concerts, they have the Philharmonic. We have the Spire Center that has plays, not just concerts, but they have plays. And the concerts they have are not wild, crazy, it's real classical, I mean, some real famous artists that are a little older that come and play, and the demographics, it's a good demographic that comes to the shows. So I just think, whatever we can do to fix that building up, and we have to do it. We put $4.5 million into the Sims House. The difference is, this is an operating venue that is making money and that has become an asset for the town of Plymouth. The Sims House, unfortunately, just sits empty, and I don't mean to compare it, but I hate to say it, but this is very important. So I support this 100%. I tell you, I know it's a lot of money, and after the Sims House, I would be probably against it if I didn't know how well this was run and what an asset it is for the downtown and waterfront, too.
The CPC took up that issue. They were concerned about the recent events around this project as we sort out what the next steps are. So we were sensitive to that, but we felt that there was quite a bit of community resolve around this building in downtown Plymouth, anchoring our village center with this magnificent building, and we felt it was a good reason. By the way, just to...
People that take pictures of it now, before the scaffolding.
Yeah.
You'd see people taking pictures of the building.
Yeah.
Imagine when you finish it, what it's going to look like. It's going to be a gem.
I've stopped people taking pictures of it, and I'm saying, gee, what are you doing? And they'll say, well, I'm a tourist, I'm from Texas, and we have nothing like this down there. This is a stunning example of New England little
And
church.
If you talk to the business people in that area,
Yeah.
they're all for this.
My only one correction is the Sims House cost $3.8 million, not 4.5.
There we go.
I stand corrected.
All right, do we have Mr. Quintal?
Bill, we heard what they've raised. How much is CPC actually invested in this building?
So the original article was we purchased the building in 2012 for $350,000. And then we put another $275,000 into renovations at that time. So that is the initial investment of $625,000. $625,000.
So I'm just going to echo Charlie. I think it's a great asset to the downtown, and I see it all over Facebook. I haven't been in personally yet because of COVID, but I'd like to definitely stop by and see a show or something. But hats off to you and your staff for all the work that you've put into that, So I'm going to support it for sure.
John?
Bob, you come back up to the mic. So I agree with my colleagues, and I've been there. I've seen you there at sellout shows, and it's a phenomenal little venue. And I remember it before the town meeting article for 625, where the purchase and the initial investment for stabilization, how passionate you had been for years with respect to the acoustics, and we got to do what we can to land this. And you're coming out of a pandemic, and we're sitting here earlier tonight talking about town meeting, but you're going to push 20,000 people through the rooms tonight, through that venue this year, correct?
Yes.
And you've probably pushed 100,000 in the last decade?
No, more than that, because we're up to, again, closer to 20,000 a year. So we've been open 8 years, so it's probably 150,000 people or so.
So what is the contingency plan? In the 3.6, what is the percentage that is in there as a buffer?
Right now, we put this out to bid. We haven't put it out to bid. We put it out to a person who did us the analysis of how much it would be. They put in about $400,000 for contingency. That was done about a year ago when costs were even higher. They've come down somewhat. So that's in there already. Since then, we've the roof project was part of that original. Since then, we've done it. Since then, we've raised, we've got the cultural facilities grant, and plus some money we've put aside. We've got another $300,000 ourselves that we could put towards it, as well as a contingency. So there's a good amount that was written into it, and there's a good amount that we have with it as a result of the work on the roof and what we have saved up too. So our goal is, like Bill said, is not to use it all if we don't have to.
But that you're telling me that number is built off a figure that it's a year old right now?
Yes.
Okay.
It was done last fall.
All right, and you had a couple of figures that this firm did, and one was with prevailing wage and the other one was with not.
Right.
All right, and the difference was about $750,000?
Somewhere along that line,
yeah.
yep.
Okay. All right, so this was just brought to my attention, and, I mean, you know, Charlie and Bill were just talking about the price tag on the Sims house, and there was an insistence for that project that it would be done by prevailing wage, and the stock market went down today as a result of the August inflation report and CPI, and, you know, we're sitting here talking about the price of gas and the cost of groceries, and we're heading into a winter where people are going to have to buy oil, and I wasn't aware of this variable until it was brought to my attention a couple of days ago. So as we move forward, I hope that we can have some conversations here. I don't know if that gap can be closed, but I don't want to circumvent the prevailing wage.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any more discussion? And,
Ed Russell, Precinct 16, excuse me, Precinct 16, and I had a lot to say, but you all have said it very well, so I'm not going to go into all of that. The one thing I might say about the price is I'm proud of this building, and I want to be proud of that building. I am proud of it now, but it's going to be gorgeous. Thank you.
okay, do we have a motion from the board?
Motion to approve.
Second? Discussion? Mr. Helm?
Mr. Cohen, I'm going to vote yes on this, but I would be remiss if I did not express my concern and annoyance that we were given 300 pages of backup for these 4 articles yesterday. I did not have a chance to read the backup on this particular article. It's unacceptable to be giving us this quantity of information with 1 day. So that's, you know, that's all I have to say.
I forwarded that information. Okay. I understand. Well taken. I will make sure that doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
One of the things that, and I can reiterate with Anthony, if we don't have information 7 days in advance for the agenda item, then pull it off the agenda. We can't have, you know, these amazing amounts of backup and only have a day or even 2 days. I think that's why we wanted the 7 days. So if you get some kind of a backup, we know it's going to be an agenda item. You know, at least we get it beforehand, because I don't want anyone, you know, holding up a manila folder saying they got nothing.
What are you looking at me for? That was John.
So, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay, three positives, 1 no, and 1 abstention. Mr. Mahoney. All right, the article passes.
Kept doing that. Again, Article 9C, Stevens Lane Estuary Protection Project. Article 9C is about acquiring some acreage, .064 acres, it's not .064, it's .64 acres, and at the cost of $30,000. The land was appraised, it's unbuildable, it is a saltwater marsh. It's located on the northern end of Stevens Field, at the foot of Stevens Lane. This area, this saltwater estuary, is taking on fresh water from as far away as behind Mount Pleasant in the hollow, making its way down under Sandwich Street, behind the fire station. There's quite a bit of wetlands back there. The water makes its way to the basketball court and then enters this estuary. This is the remnants of actually Stevens Field, the northern part of Stevens Field. Stevens Field was entirely once an estuary, and it was landfilled, and this area is the area that's untouched. Now, the importance of water moving through this area is important for the town to manage that event. Also, having a estuary that's under the control of the town, fee simple control of the town, we can better manage it for storm surges. It is, as I said before, it's zoned waterfront, it's unbuildable. It was appraised for $30,000, and that's what we're requesting. And this area that has been identified by Mass Natural Heritage, an endangered species, is an important environmental habitat, and it's one of the most productive habitats that you can possibly have for making the ocean viable. Yes, it's not a massive saltwater estuary, but it is adding to the health of Plymouth Harbor. Plymouth Harbor relies on a form of economic development in the tourist industry, people coming and boating and using our harbor. Anything that we can do to better prepare the water to enter our harbor is a good thing. So this saltwater marsh, because of its habitat and its ability to strengthen the harbor and its water quality and its habitat, is something that we should pay a great deal of attention to. It's in a critical area of environmental concerns identified under a Bio 2 map, and it is an area where you do have quite a few migrating birds coming through this area and nesting and using this area. Again, the property is currently privately owned. We entered into agreement with the owners to have it appraised, and the idea of buying this property and owning it fee simple will have better management of the resource. And here you can see, backing it up. You can see the harbor there. You can see to the right Stevens Fields. You can see behind that residential unit right on Stevens Lane, behind it the estuary. Between those two houses, one up on Union Street and one down on Stevens Lane. The estuary itself, you can kind of see the current configuration of the lot line. It's hard to see there because we are re-engineering the lot where we're taking some of the backyard, but in terms of the estuary side of the property, but relinquishing some of the uplands to the property. So the map shows what is currently existing there.
Could you use the pointer to point out?
I wish I could use that point again.
Would you please point out where this is?
Yeah. So, you can see here, where the pointer is, the land that we're acquiring goes down along here. So it's over to the mouth of the harbor, across and down, and it follows the curvature of the fence, and then back out to Stevens Lane and up to this corner again. I have another map that I can show you that probably better illustrates that. You can actually see the new engineering plan where we show you what the configuration would look like. And this is what was appraised. We went ahead and you can see now the area in which we're acquiring. You can see this area here.
Where's the ocean? To the left?
The ocean is to the top of the page. That's the harbor.
oceanfront.
We're not adding to the oceanfront. We are getting oceanfront, but it's a narrow oceanfront, about 20, 30 feet wide, to allow the water to come in and out of the estuary. So there's been a reconfiguration of the lot. It went from about more or less 0.5 acres to about 0.64 acres. So I'm showing you what it is now, and what we're acquiring is that new engineered plan.
So, Bill, I have a question. What are we going to do with that land?
So I've been talking to the Office of Marine Environmental Affairs. They would be, looking at this as an opportunity to better manage this resource. That entrance is getting clogged, and no one, and the owners don't live in this area. The entrance is clogged, so the fresh water coming into the estuary can't get out. It becomes stagnant. It becomes, problematic. And if the town owned it, the Office of Marine Environmental Affairs could better manage this estuary to allow the fresh water to go out like it should be going out. And with the entrance better managed and open, when we have a tidal storm, these estuaries act like absorption areas. So when the sea level rises in this, when we have a storm and we have a surge, if the resource is better managed, it can better function as a surge area. We're putting a lot of money into Stevens Field, just to the south, and we've done a lot of effort to move infrastructure back away from the water because we're expecting sea level rises there. We're actually using the baseball field and other components of Stevens Field as kind of a surge area, of absorption area for storms. And if we control this property, we can better manage it. It will help us during storms, and it will help us better manage the freshwater movement out of this resource and into the harbor. So if we control it, we can do that.
I think this is I think I remember when I was the CPC liaison, we had these conversations about this, and you know what? Anything on the ocean, I don't care where it is, we need to grab it. I mean, this is a good piece of land. It's part of Stevens Field. Stevens Field is going to undergo a $5 million project, so I fully support this. Mr. Mahoney.
So building on that, Mr. Town Manager, the chair just mentioned the $5 million investment down there. Is there a timeline with respect to going out to bid and potential construction?
Yes, that's a great question. It's actually a timely question. We had a meeting on Friday, September 2nd, with DPW staff, park staff, recreation staff, and the engineering firm who's been designing this. I believe we're about 75% design right now. We had a great conversation. There's a couple modifications that may need to be made. We're hoping that once those modifications are brought to the committee for Bill's review and the committee's review, we can go to final design. And if things track correctly, we hope to go to bid in January time period, break ground sometime in early spring.
So if that happens, then pretty much Stevens Field will be off access to the public for the summer of '23, correct?
Yeah,
Off
that's
limits.
correct. Yeah, that's correct. I believe it's about a year and a half of construction period.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It'll go into '24?
Yes. Do you know any different?
No, that's correct, 24.
Okay, so I agree with the chair. I can't believe it was, I think in 2006, with the DPW annex, that 2.91 acres was determined by town meeting to go into conservation and take Stevens Field from 6 to 9 acres. And I know there was a purchase of what, Bill, on Sandwich Street, a half an acre a year or two ago?
Acre and a half.
Acre and a half, up on Sandwich Street, that was an acre and a half?
Yeah.
So now you're taking Stevens Field overall out to 10 to 12 acres, and this is a great purchase.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. And finally, 9D.
9D is a Community Preservation Committee recommendation. Now, I want to walk you through a process that we became aware of earlier this year. For the last 6 months, the Community Preservation Committee was aware of that Brewers Marine on the corner of Water Street and Union Street was purchased by Safe Harbors. So it had been owned by one company. Last year, it sold. The owners of the property did approach the town to begin a permitting process of taking down the 1857 Plymouth Foundry. There, what you're looking at is the 1857 Foundry, and probably about 75% of what you're looking at in terms of facade is still intact at this location on Water Street and Union Street. They had to go through a permitting process with the town. That was the demolition delay bylaw with the Historical Commission. The Historical Commission invoked that and did a one-year stay of execution on the building from being demolished. Safe Harbors has to wait that year to give the town an opportunity to have a discussion about what we could possibly do to entertain the owners to a level of protection. Now, there is a neighborhood group that formed, the Bradford Street Area Commission, and they have been advocating for a level of preservation that they have suggested. During this period of dialogue, the two entities, Safe Harbors and the neighborhood group, entered into a conversation about possible preservation options. That's when the Community Preservation Committee was contacted by both parties to look at a possible preservation of this location. We began that process early this year. The Community Preservation Committee authorized the use of CPA funds to hire a building conservation specialist to examine the building's condition. Later on, the Community Preservation Committee authorized expenditure of funds to hire an independent cost estimator to see how much the preservation efforts that are being suggested by the different parties would cost. This here is a picture of what we know as, this would be zebra signs, I think, at the corner of Water Street and Union Street. You can see there, that is Shiatown Motors. This building was renovated in 1940 as a car dealership. And it received a cupola and a weather vane, and it acted as Shiatown Ford until about 1970, when Shiatown Ford moved up to Samoset Street. This building has been left really untouched and utilized by Brewers Marine as office space, and now is controlled by Safe Harbor. So it kind of gives you an idea of what it looked like around 1940. As you can see, it looks pretty much like it does today. But the most important integrity of this site here is that brickwork. As you can see, that brickwork on the facade of that building facing Brewster Gardens is the original brickwork of that building. So the Plymouth Foundry is encapsulated in this 1940s car dealership that has become a part of our waterfront. It is the oldest building on Plymouth waterfront at 1857. Now, the Community Preservation Committee on August 18th had to make a decision, and they moved an article to town meeting for consideration, knowing that we would hire a cost estimator, and that cost estimator was going to come back with estimates on what the level of preservation would take place. I have those estimates. They've been made available to this board. I forwarded it to your the estimates that came in today. We can talk about that a little later, but just want to recap on some of the elements that are going on here. The application, this is kind of the blow-by-blow time frame of what happened at this site, where Safe Harbors controls the property. There's a permit. The demolition bylaw is enacted in February of this year, so it runs out in February of '23. So in February 23, the delay is over, and the building could be taken down. The neighborhood discussions came up with some ideas. Those ideas were taken up by Safe Harbors. They did some modifications to those ideas. The application is currently on file with the CPC, and Safe Harbors continues to work with the CPC in cooperating on this research. Again, this is what Safe Harbors initially proposed for the location. They would tear it down, go up 35 feet with this boat storage facility. And this is what kind of struck a chord with the residents of Plymouth, worried about our waterfront, taking on a very large building that kind of looks like it belongs in a shopping center. Some people have called it Walmart on our waterfront. It is quite startling in terms of its design. And you can see here that the neighborhood group had entertained this idea of how about if we scale, not encroach on the square footage of the storage facility, but maybe change save the front building and change the materials. So Safe Harbors and Plymouth, the Bradford Street Neighborhood Group went into this conversation. This was kind of an idea that the Bradford Street Neighborhood Group came up with. They took it under consideration, and Safe Harbors came back with this, and they have proposed, saving the front section of the building, and here's some existing conditions. So they would, what Safe Harbor is now proposing is they would build their facility in the back of the location, and they would save the front of the location. Now, this is something they're cooperating with us on the research of it. In the end, right now, Safe Harbors is going through a permitting process to take the building down and build their facility. They have to go through that permitting process because that's the permitting process that's out there in front of them. They have indicated to us, and the CPC is aware of it, and I think the neighborhood group is aware of it, that if they were to save a portion of this building, they would be required to go through a more complicated permitting process, a special permitting process. Now, the town has looked into that permitting process and has outlined the different things that they would have to do. That complicated permitting process is something that they will decide whether or not to move forward based on how town meeting responds to this. If town meeting moves forward and takes up this article and decides to move forward with it, Safe Harbors would come to the table and start talking about how we preserve the front of the building. But they would not move forward if they felt as if they didn't have community support, because then now they would be going through the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they need to make sure that people are confident that this is something that everybody wants to see. Now, the current plan of the building is that when we sent it out to a cost estimator, the cost estimator started looking at what it would cost to stabilize the facade of the building, the exterior of the building. That cost was concluded to be approximately $488,000 to stabilize the facade of the building, the roof, the cupola. That was the estimate that we received today. There was a second estimate that was provided for the interior of the building, and that would be at $244,000, bringing the total cost of the project to $733,000 approximately. And the interior renovations would create, one section would be business office suites that they could rent out, but the section on the building on the far left, that entrance, that's currently, I think, a graphics company, that entrance would be an entrance to a public bathroom that would service Brewster Gardens, our waterfront, the Hat Shell. On that side of town, thousands of people are coming to this location to watch concerts, and there is no bathroom. And so this section over the building would have a small foyer where a family can come in and get oriented, pick up some information about where to go, and a bathroom. And that would be accessible by the residents of Plymouth during functional hours that we would work with Safe Harbors to utilize, if that was the wish of Safe Harbors, if we do move forward. Again, the exteriors, I think I outlined at $488,000. The interior around 244, leading to about 231. I think my math is 233 actually. I thought I had something else. No, I guess I don't. I guess I just clicked through it. I thought I had another photograph. So it's important to note that right now the CPC has moved an article to town meeting for consideration. At that time, we did not have a dollar amount. The decision of the committee was that we would wait for these estimates to come in, and we would take up that dollar amount. The committee will meet on Thursday at 7 o'clock to look at those estimates to see if they want to move forward. It will be at the pleasure of that board whether or not it moves forward. But for the logistical purposes of when our warrant opens and when we put articles on our warrant and deadlines that we must adhere to, If we did not move the article on the 18th of August, the article would not have gone to fall town meeting, and Safe Harbors has indicated that then if we were not going to entertain it at fall town meeting and the demolition ran out in February, they would move forward, take down the building, and build that storage facility as planned. So we reserved and we recommended, we forwarded an article to the warrant, and now we're going to consider that number. I'd entertain how you'd like to move forward, because typically when we move an article to town meeting, the article language may not have a number in it, and we modify the number in the motion prior to town meeting. But this is a significant amount of money, and we have a cost estimate around $733,000, so we know what the motion might look like. I'd entertain what direction you want to go in, whether you want to entertain this tonight or you want to wait for the CPC to meet on Thursday. It's up to you.
My feeling, I don't know.
My remaining sentence is that your thoughts at this time uniquely would be helpful to the CPC as it deliberates on Thursday. This is an opportunity to weigh in on what they may do with that number. I do have someone here, and I'd just like to recognize Kate Sikarik. She is with the neighborhood group that is in support of the efforts that are going on with Safe Harbors. Kate, could you just introduce yourself for a moment?
I'm feeling fuzzy.
Bill at the end.
I can't say how pleased we are to be at this point, because, last year at holiday time, it was looking pretty grim. So we just want to say, that we're grateful to Safe Harbor for coming to the table. We're grateful for everybody listening to us, all this time. For the demolition delay, we're grateful. And as I listen to Bill, I think it does sound like a really great idea. I mean, not just the facade, the look, the fitting into the village, the waterfront, but even the use of it is really, I think, smart. And it is the last remaining historical building on our waterfront. And we have an opportunity now to do the right thing and save part of this building and save some of our history and stop, the hemorrhaging that's happening with, the new building and the cookie cutter development. And so, we're so grateful to Bill for all the work that he's done. And, like I said, we're just happy to be at this point, because we've worked so hard because we believe in it. And, we just think, like with the Spire Center, it's our gem. It's the waterfront's gem. It's another place where people will look at Plymouth and say, this is special, this is old, it's history, it's, somebody cares about it. So, thank you. I won't say any more because I have to get to bed.
Yeah, Bill. I'm struggling a little bit with this, Bill.
Right.
And I'm usually in favor of, but $700,000 for a bathroom, that's what I see, and it's a lot of money. And I agree with you, the waterfront is being destroyed, the integrity, the buildings, but we don't own that building, they own the building. Why can't our boards, our historic committee and our board, planning board, make them conform to what we want there? Isn't that what the job of the planning board is?
That's a very good question.
I really, that's their job, to make sure that
But you got to understand, that building is not in a historical district, and Safe Harbors is pursuing, as of right, permitting process.
But doesn't the planning board have to okay? No, they don't.
No, they have no, we have, the only oversight the town has is the demolition delay bylaw that's opened up this conversation. It's not just about the little miniature visitor center and bathroom. It's about preserving the integrity of the facade, leaving the streetscape intact.
I mean,
you
we
know.
have to answer to the
Yep.
taxpayers. The difference between the Spire and
Right.
this is we own the Spire.
Yep.
We own the Spire. So we don't own this building. It's a private company that's worth millions, believe me. They're worth a lot of money, that's Safe Harbor. And it's just, I'm scratching my head that we're going to give them $733,000 to improve their building, so.
It would be nice if the Plymouth expanded its historical district into this neighborhood, because not only this building, but that neighborhood is one of the oldest neighborhoods in downtown Plymouth. We
Well,
have
that's
buildings from
something-
the 1750s that are unprotected, so
Well, that's
it's
another
something that we
issue
should think about.
We got to fix that issue.
Yep.
So,
Mr. Mahoney.
I'll make a motion to table this to a future date, and I'll explain if I can get a second under discussion.
I'd actually, I know you're going to make a motion, John, and I'll second it, but I actually think I already have an amendment to what you're going to motion.
Right.
So.
Well, no, I just, my
give
motion was
you a
just to
second.
table this article until a future date.
I'll give you a second for discussion.
So, Charlie, you're dead on. The significant differential here is who owns the building. But the most important thing is what Harry Helm had mentioned earlier with respect to getting a document today of hundreds of pages of data. So we have time. It's on the warrant. The CPC has not seen, they just received the data today, just like everyone else. They're going to discuss that 48 hours from now. It's just my opinion. I believe the Community Preservation Committee should take 48 hours, digest that data, come to some sort of, affirmative vote, and then return to this board. And, the article is already on the warrant. It's going to town meeting. Worst case scenario, God willing, if that town meeting happens, is that the moderator, the worst thing he can say is Article 9D, no motion, no action. And we move on to Article 10, 11, and 12. So that's it. I haven't had a chance to look at this report. Okay, Mr. Helm earlier was spot on. I can't, you can't get that volume of information and not have the proper opportunity to sit down and look at it. So that's why I'm doing this. There's no problem with CPC weighing in on Thursday night and next Tuesday or the following Tuesday, William coming back and presenting again. So I don't know what you were thinking, Madam Chair, but.
Well, I'm going to let Mr. Quintal have a conversation because my opinion is.
Thank you. I commend the CPC committee again. I think in my 2 years here, this is probably one of the most important things that I've seen come before the boards I've sat on. It's a chance to save a piece of the waterfront that we're never going to get back. And if you want to question it, look at Nelson Park, the house that sits right next to it, and Bill agrees. That one slipped through our hands. That was a big, big mistake. We listened to the citizens. I understand that you're looking at the documents we got, but sometimes that's the way it goes. It's, and those numbers aren't in concrete, and we don't even know if they're going to support those. But what I'm going to support this evening, I hope, is to show the community that I support this project, and I no way will even want a shadow of being in the way of this project. I was at the first meeting with Mr. Cohan upstairs in the Shallop room with the people of it, Safe Harbors. I get it mixed up with Clean Harbors. Safe Harbors. And they brought their attorney in, and Bill and some others had to educate the developers, all the owners, if you will, on all about the CPC and how it works. And it's quite basically, in layman's terms, they don't need to come before the town for any permit. That's coming down, and they're on their way. They don't need one, right? They don't need one special permit to do what they want to do. And I'm going to use the word, not a high building, I won't say skyscraper. But I seen it happen down where Revere Copper is. And I'll tell you, I'm still not used to that yet. I'm really not. And one of the reasons I ran for this board, there was several, 3. Water Street was one of them. It really was. And the condo nation that we're building and we can't control, because we really have to start looking at the bylaws. And in doing that, expanding the historic district, that maybe this building would have been in it, and we wouldn't be where we are today with not a lot of truth. But I have to say hats off to Safe Harbors, because they've been gentlemen and they've been watching. But, you know, again, if it goes to town meeting and it fails, then they're gonna continue on their way, and that's it. There's not another bite at the apple. So I fully support it. I'd like to hear what the chairman is. I've been hearing the same things you have, John, the last couple of days, and I've done my homework. And I really don't wanna to get into that, as we used to call it years ago, dirty laundry. Keep it for what it's worth. And if they're gonna vote on it Thursday, and we, you know, we can always, well, I'm gonna let you speak to that. But I support it 100%. I was at the table in the beginning because it was that important. I said, this cannot happen. And that's what good negotiation does. And Bill, hats off to you, you've done a great job.
So, or do you want to go?
I've got to leave right now, and I just need to say what I'm thinking here.
Okay.
Whatever you decide, but we have to do this.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
This is too important to our waterfront and to
Yes.
our town. I got to run, but I have a question for you really quickly, Bill. Okay, are you telling me that it is easier for somebody to destroy a building, a historic building, even though it's not in the historic district, destroy a building than it is to try to preserve it?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the case in our town right now?
Correct.
Okay, besides expanding the historic district, I'd say Houston, Plymouth, we have a problem, a huge problem. That's totally ridiculous. Bye.
Are we gonna vote?
Well, can you give me 2 seconds?
Okay.
All right.
Please, Harry.
So this is what I'm thinking. I also support this project. I always support CPC projects, but we don't need Bill to come back in front of us.
Right.
We can make a motion, approve the article, you know, hindering on CPC vote on Thursday, and just move forward. I mean, I love you, Bill, but I don't want to listen to you anymore this week.
Thank you.
Or next week, or before town meeting. So I think having that, it's the same thing as that you said, John, except he doesn't have to come back. As long as there's an affirmative vote, we just move it forward.
So you want me to withdraw my motion?
Or amend it.
Well, I don't.
Okay, so withdraw your
I'll
motion.
withdraw my motion.
Who, did I second it?
I think you did.
All right, I'll withdraw my second. And then I'll make a motion to support Article 9D, and as long as CPC passes on Thursday.
I'll second that because I've never seen Mr. Quintel so passionate.
Yep. All right.
Well, we're gonna vote.
We got a vote?
Yep,
All those in favor? Okay,
unanimous.
unanimous. Okay. All right, now, town manager's report. Mr. Brandisi, you've got like 3 seconds.
Before we do that, I will need the board to take a motion to execute the warrant.
Okay. A motion to execute the warrant, the fall 2022 warrant.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, and now the town manager's report.
Okay, so I know it's late, so I'll make this quick, but I guess the theme of my update tonight is just to provide a couple updates on some of the goals and priorities that the board had approved back in late August. So as you know, we have a big goal to try to create more economic development here in the community, and one way of doing that is being more business-friendly. Right now, the Inspection Service Department and the Fire Department, they're working together to relocate fire prevention on the 3rd floor in at the Inspection Services Department. So we're hoping that we're going to create this one-stop shop. So for when contractors come to Town Hall, they can file all their applications all at once, and they don't have to go to multiple buildings throughout town. So we're expecting the Fire Prevention Division to move to here in Town Hall within about 30 days. A second goal that the board has designated is for the town to become a green community designation. Last night, the school committee had approved the town's energy reduction plan, and this approval is the final step for the town to submit for the green community designation. Once approved, we're going to formalize a committee, and that committee will start looking at green community projects. A third goal we're working towards, and I wish Harry was here, but we were notified by Beth Israel, the hospital here in town, that they're willing to provide a $10,000 grant to the CAL towards the age and dementia-friendly assessment. So again, we will go to town meeting for that, so this will be a nice offset. So those are three goals that we're making progress, and we'll continue to provide updates on the various goals throughout the remaining part of this fiscal year. And then just a couple quick updates. The roofing project at Pine Hills Fire Station is underway. The Phase 2 of the West Plymouth Fire Station is underway. That consists of asbestos abatement and the demolition of the front living quarters. And then last, I see our town clerk is here, we're going to start the promotion early and often. Early voting will begin October 22nd and extend through November 4th. Pending any questions, that's all I have.
Any questions for the town manager? Or town clerk? Or anybody? All right, select board, open discussion, new business, letters, old business. Go ahead.
I noticed in our packet, I downloaded quite a few letters from the new church. Is that, they were, there it is right here. All these. New Hope Chapel. Is there any reason why we have all these in our packet? I mean,
Did you want to take that, Charlie?
There's been a lot of publicity about that church they're building on Long Pond Road. And there's a lot of, and I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but there's a lot of misinformation going out there about the size of the church and what the church is going to be used for. And I went up there just because one of the meetings, I talked to some people outside, they were talking about it. I said, what are you talking about? So the church, and it's in the Tall Timbers neighborhood, and so I went up there, and it was good timing when I went there, and they had an environmental landscaper, plus the pastor, Pastor Neil Eaton, for New Hope Church, and they just happened to be there. So we were on our way to, we were going to tour
Drew Road.
Drew Road. So I said, Pastor, I only get about 10 minutes. Can you just go over what you're doing here? And I asked him some questions, service times, things that I won't get into right now. But after listening to him, I said, why would anybody be against this project? And apparently he's got a neighbor that says he's going to hurt the aquifer, and the landscaper was saying to me, he's an environmental landscaper, and he's pretty good at what he does. He was talking about how sustainable plantings and everything he was going to do. And I said, hold your thoughts. I said, I want to bring a couple people up here to meet. So we ended up having a meeting. Derek went up there, myself. Who was up there too? Who was it, Derek? You, myself?
Steve Bulletin.
Steve Bulletin. I invited him up there too because I wanted somebody from the planning board. And they just went over it. And I'll tell you, it was fascinating what they're going to do there. And so one of the persons, she's not here right now, that's against it, I try to tell her, you got to go and visit the sites, call Pastor Neil, talk about what they're doing, ask your questions. You're going to change your tune. They're going to have services there, basically. I said, what time? On Sunday, on Long Pond Road, Sunday from 8:30 They have an 8:30 and they have a 10:30. And they're going to have police details out there on Long Pond Road doing traffic control. I mean, who's on Long Pond Road on Sunday at 8:30? So they got that covered. And the rest of the time, he told me they're going to have just small Bible studies and things like that. So there's 365 parking spaces, not 800 parking spaces. There's not going to be all these, they're going to do a little outdoor venue, but I have one next to me in the Methodist Church next to me.
Yeah.
And I hear them at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's not a big deal. But what you're going to hear, what they'll tell you is they're going to put walking trails on that property. And they're going to try and work with the Wildlands Preservation, and, because they abut, try and hook up with them. And what they'll offer to them is you can use our parking lot, because there's no parking at the Wildlands Preservations. So they can let them use the parking lot and walk the trails. And also, they're going to put a soccer field. The only grass they're going to have that's going to need irrigation or fertilizer or whatever would be they're going to build a soccer field, and it's going to be for the community. The community can use it. So it's once you listen and ask all the questions, it's a pretty good project. So they've gotten a lot of opposition. They've signed, there's signs out there. They're making signs against it. And so all these people, those are letters in favor that were sent, and that's why we've sent those. I don't think they've gone before the planning board. They haven't gone before the planning board yet, but this thing hasn't even started, and there's already opposition, and it's because of misinformation. And all I can say out there, anybody that's against the project, get a hold of Pastor Neil, set up an appointment, go up there and listen to them, listen to what they're going to do. You'll change your tune. So anyway. Anything else, Derek? I mean, you were up there.
No, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have one thing. You used to have these days all the time. I just have one thing for the community. I sat with Mr. Hayward today, and it's the family that lost their house, and we all came together, and the little son there, Carter, got a new little motorcycle, and so we had that tragedy, and we called out on the locals to help us, and Mr. Bledsoe was the collector, and Betty helped me also. And I'm just going to name a little bit. I'm not going to get into amounts. The Plymouth Firefighters Local 1768, the Plymouth DPW Department. I was contacted by Bobby Hackett for the Johnny Hackett Memorial. He lost his son several years ago. Plymouth Education Association, the school teachers. Plymouth Police Relief Association, Anna's Harborside, Shiretown Glass, Rich Stefani Properties, the Cabbie Shack, and of course we did Monday night pizzas at Squinny's. We had a boatload of cash donations from the citizens in this community, and we also filled a Yukon twice with clothing and food, to the point where they said, we don't need any more clothes, we're all set. And I talked to them today. Their mobile home has been delivered on site. It's a 4-bedroom temporary. They started demolition in the house, and they've been in it for about 3 weeks. And the oldest daughter is Christina, she's 12. Carter, who got the little motorcycle, is 6. And Aubrey is the youngest daughter, she's 5. And both the parents, Stephanie and Bruce, are very grateful, as am I, and this whole community. And once again, Plymouth comes to the rescue. And I'll tell you what, being a leader in the community, that's an awesome thing. And I hope we have some more stories where community people help each other, because that's what makes it. So that's all I have, and thank yous all. I did promise to go have adult beverages once he had the house done. So maybe I'll bring you some pictures. Thank you.
I just have one thing. One of the residents contacted me today. All of our COVID tests expire in October, and they're wondering if we're going to be purchasing more COVID tests. as we move forward. I don't know if we have funds for it, or,
That's a great question. I just spoke to Chief Foley about this, I want to say it was yesterday. We have the opportunity to have kits donated to the town through the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. So he's working through emergency management and through the health department to procure some kits as well.
Okay.
The ones that we have in place, they're also working with the state on a shelf life extension program, so that those existing ones will be relabeled and the expiration will be extended. So, yeah, more to come on those kits. We're expecting, we want to be prepared in case, there's another variant or a wave this coming winter.
right. And one more thing, and I know I've been asking for almost a month now, the porta potties that are abutting the new comfort station down, one of them is actually on private property. I've asked for them to be removed. They were still there when I came here tonight, so I'm not sure what's taking so long, but you know how I have so much patience.
Well, I can tell you that I was assured by the DPW director yesterday that those will be removed. I don't know the exact date, but I want to say by the end of this week.
Okay.
I can get the exact date, though. It's in my email.
Perfect. Anybody else? Motion to adjourn.
Good night.
Second. All those in favor?